kidding with her.
Good evening. I would like to call our regular city council meeting back to order at 7 p.m. At this time, I'd like to ask Derek Zulner from South Shores Church to come forward for the invocation. And then we will have Junior Troop 3381 and Cadet Troop 2999 come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you for your goodness and loving kindness. Thank you for this past weekend and the Easter celebrations across our county and country. And tonight we ask that you would bless this city of Laguna Niguel with peace, for our neighbors to get along with other neighbors, for businesses to prosper and give back to the community, and for this city to be able to orderly serve its people. We ask that you would protect our police, our firefighters, and we ask that you would grant wisdom to our city's leaders, not only in this room and in their work, but also in their homes. And we ask for good decisions to be made tonight. Amen.
Audience attention, color guard advance. Color guard, present the colors. Would the Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and audience please join the Pledge of Allegiance?
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, liberty and justice for all.
Audience may be seated.
Stay where you are. Go. Didn't they do a fine job? Yes, they did. Thank you, girls, for being here this evening. It's a great way to start off our city council meeting, so we appreciate your being here. And where are the troop leaders? Can we have the troop leaders come forward? Okay, please stand with the girls. So if you could please introduce yourself, tell us your name, your grade, and what school you go to.
Hello, my name is Gianna Mantuca, and I go to George White Elementary School, and I am in 4th grade.
Good evening. My name is Gabriella Backus. I attend Niguel Hills Middle School and I am in 6th grade.
Hi, my name is Malia Johnson. I go to Malcolm Elementary, and I'm in 4th grade.
Hello, my name is Sophia Mantuca. I go to Niguel Hills Middle School and I'm in 6th grade.
Hi, my name is Scarlett Robinson. I go to Malcolm Elementary School and I'm in 4th grade.
Hi, I'm Alina Sargis. I'm Gabriella's mother and the troop leader for Cadet Troop number 2999.
And I'm Devin Mantuka, and I am the troop leader of Troop 3381.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, girls. Thank you to the troop leaders for what you do to encourage the leadership and growth in these girls. We appreciate what you're doing for the community. You're developing leaders. And I think it's time for pictures.
Color guard dismissed.
Okay, let's give them a hand. We can go back up. Okay, you've heard it said many times in Laguna Niguel by this city council and the city councils before us that public safety is number one. So we have with us tonight our district attorney, Tony Rakonkis. He will be doing a presentation for us and telling us about public safety and sober living homes here in Orange County. So at this time, could the Honorable Tony Rakonkis please come forward for the presentation?
Mayor Genoway, City Council members, thank you for having me here tonight. It's a real privilege. I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the homeless issue, public safety, and about a task force that we're putting together concerning sober living homes. So, but before I get started with that, I would like to recognize that. After the last city council meeting that you had here, Supervisor Lisa Bartlett stepped forward and apologized and called her decision to vote to have homeless people put in these three cities, Laguna Niguel, Huntington Beach, and Irvine, hastily made decision and one that was wrong, and so I just wanted to say I think that's a tribute to her for one thing, because yeah, it's a rare event that you see somebody in a that kind of a position, public official apologizing and saying that hey, I was wrong about that. So, and also it's a real tribute as well to the people of the city of Laguna Niguel coming out in the kinds of numbers that they did, and making their voice heard and making their message really clear in no uncertain terms. So clearly this is a victory. Thank you. But I've talked to Supervisor Bartlett on many occasions about public safety, and I just like to stand up for her to that extent, that she is very conscious about public safety and very concerned about the safety of the people here in Laguna Niguel, as well as the other cities in her constituency, and she's looking out for the best interests of the people. So, as you've become very well aware, the homeless concern that was previously for some time concentrated on the Santa Ana River Trail has become a countywide issue as the Board of Supervisors continue to search for resources and solutions to address the individual needs. And you can see by the photos of the encampment that this, I guess you can't just see by the photos, but I can tell you that over the last 3 years or so, this encampment has grown exponentially. And that's not the only part of the homeless that we have in this county. It's just one part. We've had other homeless encampments. We still do in Santa Ana, Fullerton, and other parts of the county. And this problem, while I think the number of people evacuated or taken off of the river trail was about 600, I think turned out to be about 697 people, almost 700 people. That's just a part of the problem. It's not 700 people. Countywide, it's more like 2,000. So it's a substantially bigger issue than what was on the river trail, and it's a big problem and a crisis for the people of our county. In the wake of their enforced departure from the river trail, there were 697 members of the homeless population who were relocated to various different parts of the county. As you know, they were put into motels primarily and given vouchers for 30 days. And of course, now that 30 days is over, and it's still an ongoing problem. So this is a serious problem. These people transferred to all different parts of the county and sent to the various cities. But when they left the river trail, the cleanup was tremendous. The sheriff's department was given the responsibility to do all the cleanup, and what they took was 404 tons of debris from that encampment area, nearly 5,280 pounds of hazardous waste, much of which included human waste, and I can't remember, what they thought the exact number in pounds of human waste was, but it was somewhere over 800 pounds. And there was a time when they were removing 2 tons of debris from that area in every short interval. There were 14,000 needles, roughly 14,000 needles, and all of this was disposed of at using county resources at taxpayers' expense. So, of course, these actions don't reflect all of the people who are homeless, or all the people who lived in that homeless encampment. But your concerns about an increased homeless population within your community, I think, are very well founded. My office has prosecuted numerous cases involving transients and homeless people and people in this community that we saw in other homeless communities as well, and it's really become a regular part of our caseload, prosecuting people in that group. And some of the victims are other homeless people living in those encampments, and other parts of other numbers of victims are not. There are other people, not just home. Not that it's okay to have homeless people as victims, but I'm just saying that it's spread out. Some are homeless, and some are maybe local business people or residents or others. It's been so substantial, really, that quite a number of cases that we have are just in our ongoing business. We had a regular caseload of these, and our investigators have had to develop some techniques and learn, work on trying to keep these cases together. These cases where there'll be a victim or witnesses in the homeless area, or people who are transient, and trying to put that case together several weeks down the road for a preliminary hearing or something of that nature. It gets to be kind of difficult, and the investigators have to go out. Having tried to keep track of a witness who was maybe in a blue tent someplace along the river trail, and to try to go find him, or to try to find somebody who's identified as being a homeless transient, and try to locate that person so that there might be an arrest or whatever. So these things are really pretty resource intensive as far as my office is concerned. A few of the cases, recently we charged a homeless woman with kidnapping a 12-year-old girl as the young girl was walking to school in Santa Ana, and it was attempted kidnapping. Well, she was kidnapped, but for a short time, and thankfully that young girl had a guardian angel because there was a person who witnessed the event and intervened and it stopped it from continuing and called the police, and so that really didn't result in harm to that little girl, except I assume terrible emotional harm, I would imagine. You might recall a different case that received some media attention back in January when we arraigned a 22-year-old homeless man for special circumstances murder in an attempted rape after violently assaulting a 78-year-old homeless woman. The victim, Betty Jane Willis, was pronounced dead at the scene because of this assault that he had committed against her. And as it turned out, she was a former soul singer who recorded several songs in the 1960s, and that was Betty Jane Willis. Last summer, my office obtained a 21 years to life sentence in state prison against a third striker homeless defendant who assaulted and robbed a business owner. The defendant entered the business brandishing a pellet gun, and in that it looked like an actual handgun. He pistol whipped the business owner and dragged him into a back room where he demanded cash and threatened to kill the victim. And eventually he was identified and arrested, and like I say, he was sentenced to 21 years to life in state prison. Certainly a well-deserved sentence. There are many other examples. We could go on and on, but just to also clarify that not every homeless person is a criminal, right? I mean, there are a lot of people in this homeless area, of course, who are not criminals by any means. But I think that we can all agree that we want to limit the increase of a population that brings crime and squalor into our community. We want to try to keep that down to the greatest extent that we can. So let me share a little bit about what my office is doing on a related issue, and I think it's a small part, but I think it does certainly it has an effect on the homeless population as well. So we're putting together, and I've already started to put together and started working on a sober living home accountability task force, and so you might wonder what that has to do with homelessness, but I think you can see that Orange County is this amazing place, right? It's we have miles and miles of beaches and unlimited sunny days, it seems like, and beautiful homes, great shopping opportunities, restaurants, plenty of perks, and lots of good designated public areas and spaces, and so people want to live here, and it's just no wonder. But unfortunately, we've become known as the Rehab Riviera, and a prime location for unscrupulous operators to recruit people with various addictions from around the country, lure them to Orange County with free plane tickets and promises of treatment. And in a lot of cases, I mean, these vulnerable people, this population is being brokered as if they're a commodity and not even individuals, and these are people who are in need of help. But once they arrive, they're used and manipulated, in many cases not treated at all, and then turned onto the streets to relapse and become part of our homeless population. They're kicked out after the sober living home has billed the insurance company all the insurance company will pay. So the sober living homes play a role in this cycle of revolving door treatment where the victim is used over and over again for their insurance coverage and instead of actually getting help. Through the Sober Living Home Accountability Task Force, I'm going to seek legal remedies, and we'll be looking at a number of things. In fact, I'm thinking I'll probably be here because we have some possible regulations in mind that might be helpful in working against these rogue sober living homes. So we're already producing pursuing a number of cases of insurance fraud we've found some serious cases of where the sober living home, you might call them victims of sober living home residents, are being required by the sober living home to take urine tests or things like that, and the insurance company is billed for those at many times the cost of the actual test. And we have a case in Costa Mesa where the cost of to the insurance companies amounted to millions of dollars, just by this fraudulent billing of insurance companies. So we're bringing some cases there. We're investigating others of those cases, but it's a slow process. It's a very labor-intensive and slow process, and so my intention is to use other means besides just that to hold these places accountable. And what I have in mind is unfair business practice, false advertising, the civil cases where it's not a criminal case where you put people in jail, but it's a civil case where we can get strong civil penalties. So, like for example, in this case that we prosecuted against this biologics company that was selling baby tissue and body parts illegally, we brought the unlawful or unfair business practice case against them, and the fines were possibly so great that they agreed to pay several $100,000 in fine and close their business and promised never to come back to Orange County. And so I think there's a lot along that line that we can do, and I think with the right work and assistance from the various our partners are like yourselves and businesses and residents and that sort of thing, as we get knowledge, information about these sober living homes, I think, like I said, I think we can do a great deal. I can see where we could bring cases against hundreds of them, so as opposed to one here and one there. So, and actually make some difference. We've created a tip line, so we're asking community members who might have information to call this number, 714-64-REACT, R-E-A-C-T, or 714. Did I say 64? Yeah, 714-647-3228. And report any concerns, things that people see, and help us to gather intelligence about these places. And I think that by combining forces with law enforcement, our victims assistance people, nonprofit organizations, and others, I think we can achieve some pretty good success. Like we did, we've actually achieved good success in this kind of model working against human trafficking, and so we're putting that same thing in effect here. So, City of Laguna Niguel, the leadership here is a shining example as to why Orange County continues to be, year after year, the safest county to live in amongst all of the surrounding counties. We have less crime. This is a safer place to live. If you follow all of the different kind of crimes that the FBI tracks, we have less homicide, less assault, less robbery, less burglary, less all kinds of crime than they have in the other counties, and we intend to keep it that way. So I'd be open for questions if anybody has any.
Okay, well, we thank you for that. We thank you for your partnership in working with the city to keep our community safe, and that's important to every single person in this room and in our city. So do my council colleagues have any questions for District Attorney Rickles?
If I may, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you for coming, and I really appreciate what you're doing in regards to the sober living homes. I'm chair on ACCLC, and I think it'd be great for us to perhaps have a meeting where we've kind of changed to residential recovery reform, but we just had the state attorney from Florida who's really been dealing with the fraud, because obviously we're up against laws with the ADA and other ones, but the fraud, they're actually able to hit, and if you can cut the cost on the money, the bad players tend to go home. Right. And so I really appreciate that. So perhaps maybe we can have you meet with ACCLC, because we're moving forward on that and trying to get legislation in regards to taking that direction in regards to fraud and working with the state. So I greatly appreciate it.
Happy to. And I met with that Florida state attorney after his meeting with you, and I thought we had a pretty good productive meeting. And they're doing some really good things in Florida, so it's instructional to us as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember Lindholm?
Yes, and thank you so much for coming, and thank you for all you do for our community, our citizens, and our residents. I wanted to ask you, we had the huge issue, concern, not with the homeless, but with tents, a tent city. And the problem I have with that is it's not controlled, that people could bring hypodermic needles in, they could bring weapons in, they can bring all sorts of things in, and it's not controlled there. We want to give the best services we can and assist those who need help. So I guess my question is, how with the tents, how is there any control for weapons when you have people in tents, knives and how is there any control?
You see, this is one of the reasons why a lot of the services are not accepted or acceptable to a lot of these people in these homeless conditions, because they don't want to accept the service because they don't want to abide by the rules. So, like for example, at that I can't remember the name of it, but the community the homeless shelter in Santa Ana, where they house and they feed and take showers and allow people to be sheltered there, and they really have quite a good number of people getting those services. And when they're there, they are getting services from or being offered services from the from the various county and other places that offer services, like whatever they are. I mean, so the possible training and the various social services. But a lot of the people just won't go because they don't wish to have the rules apply to them. And so that's what you're talking about is a pretty big problem. I mean, like we have a big, I'm sure you know this or have noticed, but since Prop 47, the homeless population has grown a great deal, and a lot of the reason for that has to do with drug use. And since Prop 47 reduced all of the felonious possession and being under the influence, use of all kinds of narcotics to misdemeanors, took the teeth out of the law, took the accountability out of the drug use law. They sold that law in part by saying, well, these people should get treatment; they shouldn't be incarcerated. And but the actual result was that they fled treatment because there weren't any serious consequences of them not getting treatment. So it's just misdemeanor. They just get tickets. They have to maybe show up in court once in a while, do a few days, but they don't really care. And so they're out there. They're using drugs. They're doing all these things, and they're not availing themselves of services because they don't want to give up their lifestyle. So this is a big problem. Thank you for bringing that up. And I mean, if you have a place where a homeless shelter, there has to be rules at that place, because we have some of those people are, I mean, a lot of those people are nice people and everything, but some of them are criminals, and some violent criminals. Some might have been released from prison at an early time, or others are committing felonies, but they're reduced to misdemeanors because of Prop 47. So it's all given us a big problem.
Thank you. Councilman Minigar?
Thank you very much, District Attorney Tony Rukakis, for your excellent presentation. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for putting the bad guys behind bars. And our city is very grateful for your service to the County of Orange. I serve on the Board of Directors of Orange County Council of Governments, which is comprised of 34 cities in Orange County, and I wanted to take this opportunity to invite you, based upon your schedule and your availability. We meet every fourth Thursday of the month between 10:30 and 12 noon at the City Hall of Irvine. So I think it would be excellent for my colleagues from 33 other cities in Orange County to discuss all these issues, and also to keep us abreast of the latest developments that your office is doing. Again, thank you very much for your service.
I thank you, and I'd be very happy to take you up on that. I think that's it's a great invitation on both of you made, and I will certainly do that.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Great. And District Attorney, thank you so much for being here. We in Laguna Niguel, we talk about the safety of our residents always being our primary job here. Laguna Niguel spends more than $12 million a year on its police services. We have one of the safest cities in the country, and that's statistically been that way for a long time now. And in a city where, or in a region where a lot of cities are cutting police resources, we've been expanding our police resources over time.
Thank you. That's the right policy. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad you do. Yeah, and we continue to keep doing it that way. And so along with our police services and the Orange County Sheriff's Department, I realize that they are a huge half component of the puzzle, and your office is the second half, because they pick them up, they get them off the streets, and then you all find a way to get them behind bars or away from our community. One of the challenges, and you referenced it a second ago, was this Prop 47 and the other commensurate laws that went with it that reduced the availability for prosecution for a whole host of crimes. And if you mentioned it, but if you could talk for just a moment about the impact that Prop 47 has had on your ability or inability to prosecute those crimes, and what we as a council or as even a regional body might be able to do to help reverse that trend. Because we're seeing increases in petty theft regionally and other things that really have our citizens concerned.
Well, that's right. Some of the just so you understand, we're seeing certainly an increase in those kinds of crimes that you're talking about, the kind that are the Prop 47 crimes. We haven't really seen that with respect to the other major crimes, violent crimes, and that sort of thing. Certainly nothing that we can attribute to Prop 47. But Prop 47 did a couple of things. One of that are very very damaging as far as prosecution of criminal cases is concerned. One is this this petty theft change. So the definition of petty theft was changed from $400 or less dollars to $950 or less, which is a substantial difference. But beyond that, they changed our ability to file repeated petty thefts as a felony. So in the past, before this law change, if somebody had been convicted of petty theft a few times, or actually one prior. We have the option of filing it as a felony or a misdemeanor, and with repeated petty thefts, we file those as felonies and effectuate or have the police go out and make an arrest, put a warrant out for somebody's arrest for that. But now that's just misdemeanors, and so they understand the police can make an arrest for a misdemeanor that happens in their presence, or a felony when they have probable cause to believe a felony's been committed. So if a felony is reported and they have probable cause, they can go out and make an arrest. If it's a misdemeanor, they can't make that. They can't make an arrest. So I've gotten a lot of complaints from small businesses like Circle K, 7-Eleven, or department stores, various kinds of places where these kind of thefts occur a lot, and they're occurring a lot more, and people are becoming more brazen. The thieves are becoming more brazen about stealing. And so they will steal something and just walk right out in front of the clerk to let the clerk see, and they don't even care if they're seen. And the clerk calls the police come, or the sheriff comes, and the suspect is pointed out, and so the good police officer walks over there and identifies them and writes them a ticket, and the guy gets the ticket and puts it in his pocket with his other tickets, and so it gives us a real issue. So right. Then what happens is that eventually they wind up in court for one reason or another, failing to appear on the tickets or these various things, and somebody will be there with 8 or 10 or 12 tickets, and they'll clear them all up at once by doing 30 or 45 days in jail or something like that, and then go back to their business. And then with the drug, we talked about the drugs. That's every bit as big as this petty theft problem, maybe worse, because it actually just makes it easier for people to be drug addicts with little or no consequence. I mean, there's not much accountability. Using drugs, possession of narcotics, all kinds of narcotics, elephant tranquilizer, you name it, misdemeanor. And so if somebody's entirely addicted, all we can do is write him a ticket, and you know, maybe he'll appear in court, or maybe they won't. But as far as treatment and that sort of thing, it's entirely voluntary. We just ask them, you know, would you like some treatment? Now we're doing treatment. We're having people go to treatment in these misdemeanor cases. Some people, you know, actually want it and avail themselves of it, but those who don't, well, we really can't force it because we don't have the teeth in the law. So we need to make some changes in the law, and we have an initiative in the stage of getting signatures right now to make some changes in some of these, not all of those laws from Prop 47, but some of them, to put some teeth back into these laws, so to give us an ability to enforce. We're not going to be able to turn this around with the law the way it is. We're going to need to have better laws before we can start turning the corner on this stuff.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your efforts in trying to do that, and you definitely have our support in trying.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the long answer for this short question.
That's okay. I'm accustomed to it.
No, but that answer gave us lots of good information. So, and I'm glad to see that the new task force is going to be modeled after the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force, because I've worked with them quite a bit on the issue of human trafficking and how do we keep the children of our community safe and protect them from being targeted. And that, as you know, that task force serves as a model for the rest of the nation. So I'm very confident that the new task force will be the same. Now, the human trafficking work that we've done in this city, we had quite a campaign the governor opened a public comment period to correct Prop 57. And unfortunately, of all the thousands of letters that were sent with where it needed correction, those were not listened to. So do you see anything on the horizon as far as changing Prop 57 or anything that we can do, because human trafficking of a minor or rape of an intoxicated or unconscious person was not considered as to be a serious felony?
I think it's very clear at this point that that our governor is not of a mind to move that back at all, and his general rule that he lets people know very clearly is that if you want to change in the law, if it's going to increase any jail time or put somebody in, or possibly put somebody in prison or increase jail time, he's not going to support it. And so, and I mean, I think he means that. I don't think he's going to go back on that. So, so that's why it's the initiative process that we're working on, and I think it's too bad that we have to go that route. But with the legislature that we have in Sacramento and the governor, they just don't see this for what I think for what it really is. I mean, I don't think they understand what's happening. And when you hear them speak in public and make these make the various statements that they make, they seem to believe that Prop 57 is a great success and Prop 47 is a big success, and they're pushing for other things that liberalize the law even more. So I think it's the initiative process that we have to use. That's a hard one because it requires a lot of effort, a lot of resources. Hundreds of thousands of signatures to get something on the ballot. So I think that's the way we have to go, though. Okay. At this point. I don't think I mean, look, if we get another governor with a different point of view and some legislators with a different point of view, great. Do you see that on the horizon very soon? Or
no, I don't.
Me neither.
that would be wishful thinking, but
yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
so that's the reality of where we're living. But we greatly appreciate all that you and your office is doing to keep our community safe and to keep the criminals behind bars and
we're going to do what we can, and we're going to use every tool that we have. So, and I think that some of those, like with businesses, I think that unfair business practice, false advertising, I think that's a pretty good tool.
Yeah, no, that is a good tool. So we look forward to hearing good things as a result of that.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for spending your time with us this evening. It's key to public safety to have information and for our community to be informed. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I noticed some people standing in the back. We have some seats up here in the front if you'd like to sit down. And our next presentation is an update and a discussion on homeless status by our City Manager, Christine Ridge. And at this time, I'd like to ask City Manager Ridge to provide us with the update.
Thank you, Mayor. I've prepared a brief presentation to update everyone on the homeless issue that has been a recent focus of much of our time these last 2 weeks. So there's really 4 areas that I wanted to cover. First, I just wanted to start with some context on information about our region's homeless, then share the actions our city has taken over the past several years to ensure that the homeless do not become a crisis for our city, and then talk about the recent events that have garnered significant media coverage, and then conclude with the latest information gleaned from our meeting in federal court just today. So starting with the numbers, every other year, the County of Orange performs what's called a point-in-time count of the entire county's homeless population. Many cities also participate and receive breakout information for their specific jurisdictions. The table at the top will show you the total homeless for the last 3 counts. As you can quickly notice, the total population, specifically the unsheltered population, is increasing. While we are seeing an increase, the rest of the country is not. Unfortunately, the state of California is home to more than 1/4 of the nation's homeless population, roughly 114,000, with the most concentrated around LA, which is estimated to be about 70,000 homeless. So in Orange County, if you look at the last column, the last count done in 2017, the region had a homeless population count of 4,792. Of that number, 2,584 were unsheltered. That means they are sleeping on the streets, in the parks, in the tents. And the sheltered figure, shelter would include any homeless that are in an emergency shelter or transitional type housing. So one of the challenges that Orange County faces is the lack of low threshold shelter spaces, which has contributed to the former mass encampment along the Santa Ana River Trail and currently around the Civic Plaza at Santa Ana. To address the issue, the County of Orange has divided the county into 3 service planning areas, north, central, and south, with the overall goal of providing a complement of services in each one of those 3 planning areas. And that would include low threshold emergency shelters and the related services. From the map, I know the cities aren't drawn on there, but you can identify that our city is located in the south planning area, and this division of the county will become important a little later on in my presentation. You can also see the homeless counts of the unsheltered for each of the planning areas. As you will note, South County has by far the fewest number of unsheltered homeless, 286. Our city, Laguna Niguel, does not have a separate point-in-time figure, but it's estimated that our city has about 20 homeless individuals in our community. Other demographics about the homeless show that the majority are white male, and they're between the age of 26 and 59. So what has our city been doing to help prevent or assist at-risk homeless in our community? Well, quite a number of things, and for several years. First, the city, under the direction of elected leadership, really focused on the prevention of homeless, offering grants to service providers, of which, by the way, on the agenda tonight, there is grants to be considered to both the Family Assistant Ministries and South County Outreach, 2 of our service providers. So offering the grants to the service providers that provide homeless prevention services, housing, essentials, meals, and even tax assistance. The city has also had an HLO, or a homeless liaison officer, on board since 2013, linking homeless with faith-based services or reunification with family members and providing other assistant referrals. Really important to note is our officers have not had to issue any citations for unauthorized camping this year and very minimal citations in the previous years. Our city has in place, through private developers, 28 low and very low affordable housing units, with approximately 35 more in the pipeline. And recently, the city took over the senior mobility program and provides subsidized transportation for seniors to access the many programs and meals at our senior community center. So the recent events that have created a national spotlight on the homeless issue in Orange County really began when there were 4 lawsuits. They're now basically consolidated and just generally referred to as the Riverbed and the Civic Center litigation, which in summary challenged the County of Orange for removing individuals from the riverbed without places to locate them. As a result, the county provided 30-day motel vouchers dispersed throughout the county. As the litigation continues and the vouchers started to expire, we, the city, received an invite to attend a special session on Saturday, March 17th, held at the Santa Ana City Council chambers with Judge Carter, the presiding federal judge. I attended the entire session. It was open to the public, and it began with a brief intro from the judge, in which most significantly, he identified millions of dollars available to the county to address the homeless issue. However, much of the day was spent waiting while the plaintiff and defendant attempted to reach an agreement behind closed doors. By approximately 4:30, there was a report out that the county had agreed to extend the vouchers if they were unable to place the individuals in shelters. The very next Monday, the County of Orange held a special closed session and reported out the selection of 3 locations for emergency shelters: Irvine, Huntington Beach, and Laguna Niguel, all on county-owned property, with up to 200 going to Irvine, 100 going to Huntington Beach, and 100 going to Laguna Niguel, in that order. To get some perspective on the numbers, the county had about 600 in the voucher program from the riverbed, but did have online around 360 beds available. The Civic Center has a population that fluctuates between 100 and 200 that also needs the low-threshold emergency beds. Within 24 hours of that March 19th action, your city council unanimously voted to sue the county over placement of an encampment in Laguna Niguel at the council meeting on the 20th, which, by the way, generated a record-breaking crowd of concerned residents. The following week, at a regular Board of Supervisor meeting, the county rescinded their decision for the 3 temporary sites. So that brings me to the final slide. Today, myself and Mayor Genoway attended another meeting in which all 34 cities, city managers, and mayors were invited by Judge Carter. It was held at the federal courthouse and lasted several hours. The discussion was very productive, and we learned some key takeaways. The county has $330 million in mental health service dollars available to address the issue. Statewide, there is $2.5 billion available, and the private business sector, led by Dan Young and Bill Taramina, have pledged at least $100 million for the cause, all for solving the dual problem of lack of low-threshold beds and eventually permanent supportive housing. The judge is very committed, he emphasized this repeatedly, to have the 2 parties reach an agreement, and he has yet to issue any orders. The cities were invited, as the judge really sees the solution as a regional one and wants the cities to help. And Laguna Niguel, as one of the cities in South County, understands the importance of a location somewhere in the South region. As you remember on the earlier slide, I showed you the 3 service planning areas. The takeaway from today was a request for cities within each planning area, most importantly the South and the Northwest, to help identify a location for an emergency shelter and related services. So the city's next step are to discuss this first at the city manager level with other South County cities. I have a meeting tomorrow to do this, and then later this month there is a South Orange County Mayor's meeting where they will also be collaborating on a solution. As always, it has been the direction of this City Council to keep the residents fully informed of everything that is happening and to protect the residents' public safety and quality of life. And now, any discussion or questions?
Okay, well, I have a couple of items. First of all, as you had mentioned in your report, Laguna Niguel has always been very proactive on preventing homelessness. That's why you don't see the numbers that other cities may have, because we have worked for years on the front end. It's much better to prevent homelessness than for someone to become homeless and then try to fix it. So we've always been shown leadership in that area for many, many years, and I think
you know, we know that this property here is not an appropriate site for a homeless encampment, but we also need to show some leadership and some regional leadership, and I know other cities do look to Laguna Niguel for that. So I would like to ask our city manager if you could prepare for us a report for the next council meeting, first to show some leadership, because what they're looking for is a site in South County, and then for also for all the cities to participate. Because also when you participate in that site, then if our law enforcement were to come across someone who's homeless who needs services, they could take them there for assessment, and that is something that we would be participating in. So I'd like to see the discussion started around $100,000 for our participation in that site, and that's maybe something that we can offer when we go to that meeting and start the discussion with the other cities. But this is something that does have to be addressed. It's not just our immediate community, it's our regional community, and we do need to work together on that. And I think that would be probably an appropriate way for Laguna Niguel to participate. Also, another item, and I know this is something that Councilmember Lindholm was very interested in, is to form a homeless task force. There's a lot of information coming to us. So if we could have this as a limited duration task force to make recommendations to the council while we continue to work through the current challenges that are being addressed. And if you could bring us back some information on what the makeup of that should be and the tasks. And but again, this would be for limited duration, and I'd also like to see some participation on it by our nonprofit organizations. So do we have any comments or questions from council?
Just one. You know, maybe it's a personal belief, but I'm called to do several things. One is to do justice and to do mercy. And over the last several weeks, at least the last 2 weeks, we have seen a fair measure of social justice because our residents have spoken out and told them very clearly what it is that we wanted. And I appreciate my council colleagues and the city manager and for those regionally who've been listening to that, and I appreciate that support. The next step, however, is to do mercy. And we are called to do that, and I think it's time for Laguna Niguel to do what Laguna Niguel does best and show its abundant compassion, its commitment to taking care of its people, and those are people of all different qualities of life, and some of whom may be homeless. I'm honored and proud that our efforts thus far have kept those numbers extraordinarily low, but that doesn't mean that it's gone, and so we'll take care of that. And I appreciate what you had to say tonight, City Manager, and I'm very glad that we're going to be on the forefront of taking care of this going forward. Thank you. Thank you to all of you as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank our city manager for that staff report. Again, it's priority to keep everyone updates. So obviously, when you meet with the city managers, we'll have an update on that as well. And as for the mayor, I completely agree. I think it's important that we have something on the next agenda to address. It's obvious that Laguna Niguel is not a feasible place to have encampment. However, we do need to do our part. This is a regional problem, and so we're going to work together on that. So I think that's a great thing to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from council? Okay, I know we have some that we'll address during public communications. So that concludes our presentations this evening, and we'll now move on to our next item, which is public communications. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is required to complete a gold-colored request to speak form. They're available on the counter near the back door. Please submit the completed form to our City Clerk Gomez prior to being heard by the City Council, and each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Do I have all the forms?
Yes, Mayor. Yeah.
Okay. So first we have Jason Marichal.
Good evening.
Please
First,
state your name and address.
Oh, Jason Marichal, 30032 Running Deer Lane. First, I want to thank, we had 4 of our 5 city council members, including the mayor, at the Board of Supervisors meeting last Tuesday to speak on Laguna Niguel's behalf, and we actually were the best represented city from public officials, so I want to thank all of you for that. it makes a big difference. And I want to thank you for mentioning that this site's not appropriate for obviously a temporary homeless shelter. It's interesting, when I was doing some research myself, I came across the 4,791 number for the amount of homeless people in Orange County. But if you look at the Housing and Urban Development Report for how many shelter beds we have in Orange County, that was something in the range of 5,700. So it seems like we have more beds than homeless people, but it could be that we have the wrong kind of distribution of the types of beds. So I don't know if maybe repurposing some of those beds might be appropriate. But the other thing that I noticed in doing a lot of kind of whirlwind research on this is that so we have inclusionary zoning for by right homeless shelter development, so that in certain zones that you can basically build without any sort of discretionary hearing or public comment on the project. And that's required by state law, but it's not necessarily an unlimited right. So if you go around the county, you'll see that in most cities, there's a limit on how many beds you can build by right in those inclusionary zones. And the number that seems to be the most popular is either 20 or 30. We don't have a limit in our code, in our zoning code, and it could be because of the age of our zoning code, and it probably even predates SB2. I think we might need to take action as a city to make sure that at the very minimum that we limit the number of beds that can be developed by right in our inclusionary zones to a number like 20 or 30. Just looking at our neighbors, Dana Point is limited to 20, Laguna Hills is 20, Laguna Woods is 20, and Mission Viejo is 10. And so that might be an appropriate way for us to safeguard ourselves with regards to the code. Obviously, there's nothing we can do if the county comes in, swoops in, decides they want to plop a bunch of beds other than do what we did, which was sort of peacefully protest that. But that might be something that we can do. So that's just a suggestion. Other cities have additional requirements like offsets to residential housing and stuff like that. You know, Fullerton does, Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods again, Anaheim, Santa Ana. Places in particular that deal with a homeless population often have further requirements in their inclusionary zoning ordinance.
You have 30 seconds.
But anyway, I think it's a great idea to be a participant in this process and devote some money to it so that there is an appropriate place that's located in South Orange County. And that's all I have to say. But thank you again for showing up at the Board of Supervisors.
Well, and I'd like to thank you, too, for coming as a resident and speaking at the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for exercising your voice and being part of the process. So thank you. Hey, Paul Willems.
Members of the council, my name is Paul Willems, and I'm a resident of Laguna Niguel. Let me start by offering my heartfelt congratulations to Linda Lindholm for her recent appointment to council member. You have in the past already, served as with distinction as mayor, council member, and planning commissioner. However, we need your expertise now more than ever. Welcome back. I also want to congratulate Christine Rich for your appointment as city manager. I wish you all the best in your future endeavor. Now the business at hand, namely homeless issue. When the county supervisors approve the transfer of 100 homeless people to Laguna Niguel, they in essence violated the most basic legal mandate, namely public safety. Consequently, their trustworthiness to evaluate future projects, similar projects in the future, must be seriously questioned. In order to safeguard our community, I'm proposing that council initiate the process to negotiate the transfer of ownership from the property in question to the city of Laguna Niguel. Assuming that the timing of this transaction is crucial, I urge council to arrange for a special meeting for next week, Monday, April 9, 2018, or as an alternative to agendize this item for the April 17, 2018 regular council meeting. If council wish me to formalize my proposal, I'm prepared to send a letter to our city manager requesting to agendize the above mentioned alternatives. So, Mayor, council member, what's your preference?
I think we heard your comments, and we're aware of that sentiment. So we appreciate your bringing that to us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willems. Okay, next, Florina Massbaum. Please state your name and address.
Hello, I am Florina Massbaum. I am a realtor and serving South Orange County for the past 11 years. I live in Quail Creek, which is on the border with Laguna Hills and Laguna Niguel. I want to raise up a couple of issues, and I will start with a quote from our most beloved governor before this present governor, was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who said that we don't solve problems by complaining in front of TV or on social media. We solve them by getting up and doing something. Pick up your cause and act. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And that really hits home, that we all can do something instead of complaining. And I am very appreciative of Laguna Niguel standing up for the people and totally turning things around. The county really backed down, and we have an opportunity to make a big change. So I have a couple of proposals to make. I have been really active on social media, and I saw a proposed site. I know I am not Irvine citizen, but you know what? We are all South County, one single community that we don't have borders. We just have one single, logo in between the cities. So our problem is our neighbor's problem. Somebody proposed that the recent closed lakes of Irvine could be a spot that could be used for temporary big-size homeless shelter. And I spot an article about the San Diego County solving their temporary homeless crisis by putting some industrial size from 250 to 350 people. And they hired some community organizers, and they had security, they had supervisors, they had food trucks on there, and I propose to raise this issue forward.
You have 20 seconds.
And the second will be to support the previous member proposal. In this litigious moment, it will be a great moment to bring back our property to the city. It seems like it wasn't a deed, it was just a contract. Since they are in breach of contract, not building that city center, I think the city can ask for the property back and give it to the highest and best use. Thank you for.
Please, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may we ask our city manager to talk about the RFP that's out on that project? Because that was not mentioned tonight, with your indulgence.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Lindholm, the County of Orange is the owner of the parcel adjacent to this building. And this is round 2 of an RFP, and it was issued in February, and it has a response deadline of May 23rd for all proposers to respond by. And just last week, they did do a site tour, and they did have a handful of developers that attended the site tour, and we as well had individuals from our community development department on that tour. So we're sitting tight, and the deadline's the 23rd for all responses.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, so those public communications were on the presentation. Before going on to the rest of them, I want to address 2 issues that we have received as council members many emails from our residents for, and we appreciate getting those and knowing what you're thinking, and want you to know what we're thinking and that we're moving on some of those items. So the first one is we've had many emails regarding SB 54, the California Values Act, which is also known as the Sanctuary State. And Councilmember Davies and I have requested that our city staff look into that and bring us back a staff report and a possible resolution on that. There are some legal issues that it does take time to prepare that report that need to be looked at, but we are considering that. We've heard your emails, we have received them, and we are going to be moving forward with bringing that to the council. Secondly, we've received many emails on net neutrality. And staff is researching the impacts of this measure to determine the impact on our businesses, our residents, and our government operations. So just to let you know that we are receiving those emails, we are looking into it, and you will be hearing from us more in the future on those 2 particular items. Do any of my council colleagues want to comment on either one of those? Okay, so let's go on to public communications. Continue with that, and we have Mike Whipple.
My name is Mike Whipple. I reside at 30896 Rivera Place, Laguna Niguel. My family moved to Laguna Niguel in 1974. I was employed in Los Angeles. I drove the 65 miles, but I didn't want to live in Los Angeles. I wanted to live in Laguna Niguel. For the first 20 years, my community involvement was primarily coaching, supporting, volunteering for my kids' sports teams. They went off to college. I found myself with a lot of time. I got involved with community work. But the thing that activated me and activated this entire community was the proposal for an airport at El Toro. And we had more than 600 people turning out. We got organized. There are things that the city cannot do, things the city cannot say that a group of organized individuals can say and do, and we did. We knew that we had to change the general plan. We knew that we had to change the supervisors. We had only one supervisor that represented us. We supported Mayor Sullivan from Huntington Beach. That failed. We supported Chris Norby. We supported Todd Spitzer. Both were elected. And I think Todd remembers. He's the only member of the Board of Supervisors that was there, that saw what Laguna Niguel could do. And that's why he came here. That's why he voted against designating the 3 cities as a homeless camp. As a result of my community involvement, I was selected Citizen of the Year in '99. I was elected to the City Council in 2000, and I served for 8 years. And it was a wonderful time to serve. When I left, I thought my work was done, that we had left the city financially secure and protected from the intrusions of the county. But I was wrong. My neighbor came to me and said, Mike, the house that just sold across the street is owned by a detox operator. They have a license. What can we do?
You have 30
And
seconds.
the same block, another block, we had another house that was proposed to be bought by a sober living operator. We had a third house that was owned by an operator who was going to have a detox facility. We organized, that community organized. We were passionate, organized, resourceful, watchful. Today, there is no detox center. There is no sober living community in our little homeowner association.
That's your time.
I just want to let one last thought, and that is, as individuals, there are things we can do and say that the county, the city cannot do or say. There are things that we can do and say that our homeowners associations cannot do. We need to get organized. And so I want to join with others to form such an organization where we can take actions that will have an impact not only on sober living and detox, but on the homeless situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Chad Kurthy. And please state your name and address.
Honorable Mayor, and members of the City Council, my name is Chad Kurthy. I'm a resident of Rancho Santa Margarita and a 911 dispatcher in the Orange County Fire Authority 911 Center, where I've worked for over 10 years dedicated to your safety. Councilmember Davies sits on the OCFA Board of Directors, where she represents the rest of the City Council and Laguna Niguel citizens. Currently, the OCFA Board of Directors is attempting to significantly decrease the daily staffing in the 911 Center from what it currently is by switching the dispatchers from their existing 24-hour shifts to 12-hour shifts. In fact, the new staffing reduction will cost over $500,000 more a year. In 2006 and 2016, OCFA management conducted 911 center staffing studies that support 24-hour shifts being the better option for the 911 dispatchers. In addition to these studies, OCFA executive management has conducted another study on our 911 staffing that was published last month that again supports the 24-hour shifts are advantageous for the fire authority, its member cities, and the taxpayer. In addition to copies of the new study, I brought each of you the 911 dispatcher's response to it. You'll find our response is easy to follow and clearly laid out. Currently, under the existing 24-hour shift schedule, you have 10 911 dispatchers on duty 24 hours a day. With 12-hour shifts, you would see as much of a decrease as 4 dispatchers each day. This is a clear downsizing of 911 at a cost of over $500,000 more a year. It's all here in this report conducted by OCFA management. Currently, we work 24-hour shifts, but only get paid 17 of those hours. We do not get paid for sleep time. We only get paid if we are woken up due to emergency activity. We do this for surge capacity in the event of a large emergency or surge of 911 calls. We have no problem with this practice or desire to change it. We want our staffing to remain unchanged. If we are switched to 12-hour shifts, you are paying $500,000 to lose this imperative capability. What is going to happen when the short-staffed 911 center receives a surge of 911 calls and radio calls from firefighters at the same time? Whose 911 call is going to have to wait to be answered when there's just not enough 911 dispatchers to answer it? Councilmember Davies and the OCFA Board of Directors are ultimately responsible for the life safety of the 23 cities, including Laguna Niguel, and the 1.8 million people who depend on OCFA for emergency fire and paramedic services. I'm here to hold Councilmember Davies and the rest of the OCFA Board of Directors accountable if they continue with this deadly decision. Rest assured, when this downstaffing gets someone killed, the 911 dispatchers will be there to make sure the appropriate people are aware that the Board of Directors knowingly downsized the 911 center and did it with multiple studies that support strongly against it. We will hold the board accountable. Please don't jeopardize the safety of those that are depending on you. Thank you for your time.
John Dimitru. And please state your name and address.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, my name is John Dimitru. I'm actually a resident of the city of Orange. I too also work for the Orange County Fire Authority as a 911 dispatcher way up in the city of Irvine off Jamboree, and take great pride in having served your community for almost 30 years. Everything you can imagine in this city has occurred, and we've all had a little part of either helping or coaxing or coaching somebody through a very traumatic event in their life. One of the things that's very interesting about the Orange County Fire Authority, and you just heard my coworker talk about it, is that we're staffed with 10 folks per day to serve a population base of 1.8 million people. And Mayor, you had mentioned about a community, the county community as a whole. And that's what the fire authority is. It takes care of not just one city, but the entire community. And we take great pride that if there's events going on in Santa Ana or events going on in Buena Park or Mission Viejo, that when somebody from Laguna Niguel calls, they have no idea other than that their event is occurring and that they're the only thing that matters to our entire agency, from the call taker to the paramedics to the hospital staff that they go and visit, or the fire that's being extinguished. With 1.8 million to serve with 10 folks per day, downsizing a 911 center is not just ridiculous, but critically important to follow through and not do. It has a cost increase that's just about $553,000 a year. Now, as a structural fire fund city, it doesn't impact you as much as you may think. However, under Government Code 6503.1, there is an ability to increase your cost past your regular percentage rates that you currently pay for an increase. So that cost will get passed on. But what doesn't make sense to me from a good governance side, and I've had a little bit of time in government through elective office myself, is nowhere do you see a board of elected folks or appointed actually go and figure out a way to cut services and at the same time increase cost. It boggles the mind, but only in government can that happen. So I would implore Councilmember Davies, please, Laguna Niguel, you represent them, you represent your legislative body, you represent all your community as well as the 1.8 million folks to make good decisions. And while they're sometimes tough, and at this time we all seem to be on opposite sides, it isn't a union thing. It isn't about, it's not about anything other than serving the community and making sure those phones get answered, so folks will always have the opportunity at every moment of the day to have the full capable service they currently do today. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
And next is Rick Regal.
Mayor Genoway, council members, staff, thank you for having me tonight. I come before you representing the Chamber of Commerce of Laguna Niguel. I'm the sitting chair. I have the privilege of performing that duty this year. First of all, I absolutely want to thank this board and the staff and the community members for the swift action that was taken in the last few weeks to take care of the homeless challenge, and I know that that battle is going to continue on for a while. I know it's not over yet, so thank you for that. Secondly, I wanted to thank you all for your continued support of our Chamber of Commerce and our hundreds and hundreds of businesses that we represent, the community. And finally, I'd like to thank you all and invite you this Friday over in the community center next door. We're hosting a community affairs event. Sandra Hutchins, our current sheriff, will be speaking and giving her picture of how Orange County is performing right now. It should be a very interesting speech, probably the last time we'll get to see her here in Orange County as far as public speaking. So you're all invited. You're all welcome to come, and community members are also all welcome to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. And that meeting on Friday will be right across the hall in the community room starting at 7:30.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay, City Clerk Gomez, any more gold slips?
No, Mayor, no more slips.
Okay, so public communications is now closed. We will now move on to our consent calendar, items 1 through 14. Are there any items that need to be pulled for comment or discussion?
Just going to pull item 7 for comment, please.
I'm just wondering, do we have requests to speak on some of these parking permit issues?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Are you pulling anything?
Very briefly on items 10 and 11.
Okay.
Move the remainder?
Second it.
Okay, so items 7, 10, and 11 have been pulled. Councilmember Lindholm has moved the remainder. Can't even talk. Remainder. And it's been and has been seconded by
Sound like me.
Councilmember Davies. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Okay. So the balance has been approved. Item number 7, Councilman Jennings.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I wanted to call the public's attention to this. We've had a tremendous number of trees that have had to be removed in the community over the past 2 years, primarily due to beetle infestation. But the request is always follows is, what are we doing to replace them? And I wanted to give you just a second's worth of update. I have received a commitment from the city that for every tree that comes down, we are committed to putting at least one tree back in its place, in some instances multiple trees. Some of those have been in the median along Crown Valley Parkway, and that's a real absence when you drive down in the scenic parkway, and some of the trees are missing. So through this item number 7, we are committed to replacing, just on that one strip on Crown Valley Parkway, 277 new trees that are varieties that are not susceptible to the beetle, so they'll be there for a long time. And to the extent that any of the other trees get infested with that, they can't cross-populate that into the new trees that we're putting in. So that's really important. We try to keep the trees. None of these trees that you see are indigenous to Southern California, so they take great effort to get there, and we take great care of them when they're there. So I just want to let you know that that's something that we're doing, and I think it's going to keep our city looking very, very nice for years and years to come. So with that, unless there are other comments, I move the item.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional comments? Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Jennings, seconded by Councilmember Davies. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, we're now on to item number 10, which is the Somerset Point Homeowners Association permit parking request. Okay, do we have a staff report?
I would ask if there's any members of the public that wanted to speak on this issue.
Okay, we have John Harms.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. My name is John Harms. I live at 29801 Weatherwood, which is in the Somerset Point community. I've been a resident of the community since 2002, and I currently serve on our Homeowners Association board. We're so very pleased to be here this evening at the conclusion of almost 2.5 years of work, and look forward to the council approving the recommendation of the Traffic Commission regarding our request for parking permits within our community. I know that over the years of this journey, you've frequently heard from Dan Guerra, our association president. Dan and his wife are enjoying a well-deserved vacation in Hawaii, but disappointed he couldn't be here this evening. 2.5 years ago, the growing number of cars was creating a serious challenge within our community, those cars parked in our community. But most importantly, the realtors that work our neighborhood were telling us that they would reduce the sale price of our homes between $100,000 and $200,000 as compared to nearby non-gated communities. This diminution of property value is real. And the primary reason cited was the continued growth of the number of vehicles parking in our neighborhood. To give you a really one but simple example, in the 3 years since I retired and have a bit more time at home, I've yet to see an unencumbered Wednesday street sweep. The cars in question are non-resident cars. Our HOA has no leverage regarding these cars, and consequently, we aren't able to join the same clean streets as other communities. However, we sought first to be good neighbors. We work collaboratively with the Traffic Commission staff and the Sheriff's Department for almost 2 years to identify and have opened 51 additional parking places on Hidden Hills and Marina Hills. An additional 6 opened up on Tessier. This was Dan Guerra and his measuring tape and multiple meetings with the Traffic Commission. To be clear, it is the residents of Laguna Serrano apartments and Hidden Hill condominium rentals that are parking in our community. In accordance with the Laguna Niguel Municipal Code, as I understand it, each community is to be viewed individually. I know you have a separate request from another community in which the overflow parking comes from the Windridge Apartments. This complex is approximately a mile from the First Street in the Somerset Point community. Their residents simply do not park in our neighborhood.
You have
Please
30
keep them
seconds.
separate. I know you're familiar with how close we've been in the final vote previously. In fact, the scheduled city council vote almost a year ago was put on hold to allow the Traffic Commission to investigate parking permits concepts citywide. So we return again within a few hours of a final vote, and we look forward to your approval of the Traffic Commission recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Genoway, if I might, I would suggest that maybe it might be helpful if we had a staff report.
Honorable Mayor, council members, as the speaker just spoke, this has been a process that's taken 2.5 years. The city looks at these types of requests in incremental fashion. When this item went to the commission the first time, the commission voted to institute overnight parking restriction. I will draw your attention to attachment H in the staff report. It shows the results of the nighttime survey that the staff had conducted 2 years ago, and it shows that about 68% of the cars parked within this particular neighborhood, they belong to the outside folks. After the overnight parking restriction went into effect, that number reduced to 59%, the average. But it grew back again, and if you look at the results of the studies that we did in October of this year, 78% of the cars parked within this neighborhood belong to the folks outside. The comment that we received from several residents within this neighborhood is that they cannot park at or near their homes. Their visitors have to park several blocks away in order to get to their homes. And that's been the main reason for their request for the permit parking. It's in the staff's view, they have clearly established interference, substantial interference with parking ability. I'll be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director of Public Works? Okay. We have one more request to speak. Fred Tellerico.
Good evening. My name is Fred Tallarico, 1278 Glen Air, Laguna Beach, California. I'm representing Windridge Apartments Complex. I appreciate the efforts of this council, members of the city staff, and members of the community that we've been working with over the last several months to try to find a solution to off-street parking and parking in this area. This afternoon, we delivered a letter to the city that addresses our major concerns. And for the comments that are included within that letter and for the correspondence that we received previously, we urge the city council to delay this until you either delay this or reject this proposal for both Somerset and Sterling parking districts. We've outlined our concerns at length. We think there are many things that are going on within this area and that they all need to be addressed before we take this action. We're here to answer any questions we can related to this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Minigar.
All right. I serve along with my colleague, Councilwoman Lori Davies, in the Traffic and Transportation Commission of the city. And for the past 2.5 years, anytime we have a meeting, we always hear about parking issues within that specific area of our beautiful city. We hired a consultant to analyze the whole area, to come up with specific findings. Quite frankly, we've been beating it to death, and we've brainstormed it more than usual. I've discussed this with our legal counsel, Mr. Dixon, in great length, And as a subject matter expert that I go to courts a lot in my private practice, I'm in total agreement with the findings of our city attorney with regard to the recommendation of our Traffic and Transportation Commission to this council. Having said that, just to get specific in two areas. One, according to the California Environmental Quality Act, and also according to our municipal code, the city has done what it should have done. And I don't see any shortcomings, if you will. So I'm in total agreement as an expert witness and as a registered engineer in the great state of California that I attest to his findings, along with making a recommendation by the Traffic Commission to this body. So short to the point, I concur with the 4 specific recommendations for the Somerset Point HOA, which I don't know, Mr. City Attorney, if I should read all the 4 or it would be sufficient just to itemize them as items A, B, C, and D on page 8 of the document that we have.
That would be sufficient.
Very good. So with all that said, I'm voting in favor of this recommendation.
Okay, we have other council comments. Are you,
I'm
have
done.
you concluded?
Yes.
Who would like to go next?
Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman Menegar, for that. That is correct. This has been going on for a long time. We've got several inches worth of paper here before us. We know that the Traffic and Transportation Commission has looked at this in great detail, as have we, and most of that information is passed along to us, and our review is de novo of sorts to take up the cause and try to make the best determination we can. A few things that I note out of the report, including the information that's been passed along from public comments to the Traffic and Transportation Commission, is that there is indeed a shortage of reasonably available and convenient residential parking spaces, and I think that's somewhat obvious. It's also obvious that the residents cannot find public street parking in front of their residences or near their residences, and that their guests have the same problem. And they're also experiencing their driveways being either partially or completely blocked by traffic and parking. They've also dealt with a certain nuisance value of having cars moving in and out and the unknowns of that. I guess in sum what I'm saying is that I think that the existence of these parking problems indeed does constitute a substantial interference with what I see as the normal and expected use of the public parking spaces in that area. And for that, as a legislative decision, I find that that's substantial evidence that I need to find that this is a valid and worthy parking permit. Now, it does have my support.
Thank you. Councilmember Davies?
Thank you, Mayor. As Councilmember Menegar says, I've been on Traffic and Transportation for going on 6 years, and this has been the hot topic. Obviously, this is a concern. The bottom line is we have more people living in both single-family homes as well as apartments, and we have lack of parking. And right now, it is consuming the streets. One thing I want to give kudos to really is our staff, our public works staff. We have looked at many options throughout this year, trying to find something that we think would work best. We've looked in the previous communities that actually have parking permits, and they're working well. And so I would definitely go ahead and be your second or your third in regards to approving the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lindholm?
Thank you. Great respect to my fellow colleagues who sit on the Traffic Commission, because I know that the process is lengthy, it's very detailed, and it's very spelled out. So if you are seeing, and I have not been here for that period of time, that this has been a major issue for the neighborhoods, and I will be supportive of that. Question though, how will the neighborhood be notified? Will there be signs posted? How do you roll out this when we vote for it?
Letters will go out and advise the residents that they need to come in and talk to us in order to obtain permits. It'll take roughly 4 weeks before the signs go up. And once the signs are up, typically the police services will issue warnings for those folks who don't pay attention to the signs. And after that, they'll start enforcement. So there'll be plenty of notice going to the residents.
Thank you.
This process has gone on for quite a while. Our staff has been extremely thorough in reviewing this, as has our traffic commission, and I really commend the residents of the Somerset Point, because I know that when this process started, they were working with staff to try to find some alternatives. But after all this work that has been done, it still is that the vehicles that are parking there are substantially interfering with the normal and expected use of available parking, public street parking spaces on a regular basis. So I am in favor of this permit parking, and I believe a motion has been made by Councilmember Minigar and was seconded by Councilmember Davies. Any more discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, item number 11. This is the Sterling Niguel Homeowners Association permit parking request. Director Abizadeh, would you
yes.
like to do a staff report first?
I'll provide a brief staff report. Similar to the other item, this request has been to the commission for the past 2 years. They've had a number of discussions on this item. And I believe, as you'll hear from the residents this evening, they have been complaining about the same issues that we heard, similar to Somerset, that they cannot find adequate parking in front of their homes. Their visitors and guests, they have to park several blocks away in order to walk to their houses. So it has been a substantial interference with the normal use of the neighborhood. And I believe the commission, hearing all those comments from the residents, decided to go ahead and approve the request for permit parking. I believe there are several residents who want to speak on this item this evening. I'll be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Director Abizadeh? Okay, so we have some requests to speak. The first one is Timothy Bowman. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Timothy Bowman. I am live at 30012 Whitecap in Sterling, Niguel. I thank you for this opportunity, Madam Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and fellow residents to address you. I am here to ask for your affirmative vote on the parking permits for Sterling, Niguel. The issues have been indeed well documented. You have heard many of us give you the outline of what's going on here. And we have to say that regretfully, the Windridge Apartments' intransigence on this has only blocked this for an extended length of time. Their so-called comprehensive solutions are in fact no solutions at all and are only stalling in hopes that the issue will go away. As you spoke about getting involved, we are involved. We are not going away. We do want to see this brought to a fruitful completion, and we appreciate your affirmative vote on this evening. Thank you.
Charla Maroshi. State your name and address, please.
Yes, it's Charla Maraki, and I live at 24872 Rigger in Sterling, Niguel. I've lived there for 17 years. I just want to thank you for actually listening to this issue over 2 years ago, where you approved this under the grandfathered policy. And so we've been working at this for a long time, and we're very proactive over 2 years ago to bring this to your attention. I did want to read a statement from a local real estate agent regarding this matter. I feel like it's important to hear from somebody who's doing transactions in the community and in our specific homeowner association. He says, yes, I'm very familiar with the parking issues with the 3 large apartment complexes, which have only been getting worse. This started becoming a problem about 5 years ago, and then homeowners have been battling the apartment complexes via the city. Many proposals have been discussed, including parking by permit only, but none actually implemented as far as I know. Home values have unequivocally dropped in Sterling, Niguel due to the parking, since any time I sell a home in the neighborhood, buyers mention it. I recently sold a home on your street, and the parking and riffraff from the apartments was a major concern. I also tried to sell a home on Poseidon recently and was unsuccessful due to the parking issue. Every homeowner all the way up to Stonegate is aware of this. I also sold a home on Oberlin Street a few weeks ago, and one of the reasons for moving was concern from the apartments. Homeowners are literally moving out of the neighborhood because of this, and homes have definitely taken a financial hit. So I just wanted the city council to be aware that this is dramatically not only impacting how we live on a daily basis, but the long-term financial implications this is having in our communities and the type of people that are coming in and moving in and out of our communities. So I would request that the council do what you just did with the previous homeowners association and offer us also the same protection. I also know there's a question how many permits are issued. That doesn't seem to be as big an issue as just having permits in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Fred Tellerico.
Fred Tellerico, representing Windridge Apartments. Madam Mayor, members of the council. We submitted a letter, as I mentioned, on both of these parking districts earlier today, trying to respond to the multiple issues and challenges that we think you have related to this. For the reasons stated in that letter, our previous correspondence and testimony given tonight, we urge the City Council that you delay this, that you reject it if you can't delay it. These two parking districts, and especially this last one, will reduce parking available to all of the residents in the city. No matter how you look at it, this would be the, and I could be wrong, I think 12th or 13th district you've adopted. Within the context of that, you haven't added one parking space. There's a need, there's a demand, there's a need for parking in this area. The answer is not eliminating spaces. We respectfully disagree. We think there's significant issues. We think that your staff is working through those. We don't think that job's done yet. Recently there's been a survey that has become, that has gone out last week related to the issues and what the solution should be. At a minimum, we should wait to find out what the responses to that survey are. I don't know what they will be. I have only basically read it in the last day or so. Needless to say, we're here to try to answer any questions we can. We intend to continue to work with you and your staff as diligently as we can, but we can no longer just stand by and watch piecemeal approval of these districts to the detriment of our community. Thank you so much.
Miriam Tarzi.
Good evening. My name is Miriam Tarzi, Sterling Niguel residence at 30051 Corsair Street. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a 16-year resident of Sterling Niguel. Thank you for having this issue on the agenda. After reviewing the agenda for the City Council meeting today, I feel that the report has some inconsistencies as to the recommendation if approved. Specifically, there are 2 points I would like to address. The first thing is on October 17, the City Council voted to grandfather in Sterling Niguel regarding parking permit. Therefore, the original municipal code, section 7-4-607, regarding parking permit would apply to Sterling Niguel. That code in sections F and G state each household will receive 1 permit, decal per registered vehicle, and each residential unit shall be entitled to receive 3 mirror type guest parking permits from the director. Therefore, the recommendation should be resubmitted and noted that Sterling Niguel is grandfathered in, and therefore the new resolution, which this current agenda doesn't even rely on correctly, resolution number 2017-1233, does not apply to Sterling Niguel since we were grandfathered in. Therefore, Sterling Niguel should get 3 guest parking permits. Each household will receive 1 permanent decal per registered vehicle. This is imperative because the City Council, you voted for this. We were there and you grandfathered in Sterling Niguel, And the signatures that we did get for this from our residents was for that municipal code. Lastly, the logic used by the staff seems a little strange to me in why they're issuing one guest parking and one residential parking. Basically, they state that if all the residents use the permits on the same night, on the same day, then there won't be any parking left. Well, the probability of that ever happening would be very near to impossible. The second issue I want to bring up is regarding the time. Speaking with several Sterling Niguel residents, we would like the no overtime parking time to be 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. We find that this is reasonable after speaking with several residents. Further, we are a community in Laguna Niguel.
You have 30 seconds.
Of property owners. We pay high property taxes to enjoy our homes, and we work hard to be part of this community. Therefore, living in this community and hoping to also curb overflow parking from outside areas should not mean that we don't want to enjoy our homes too. We want homeowners to not feel restricted. Therefore, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. creates less of a burden and is a reasonable time for Sterling Niguel residents to enjoy their homes with their family and their friends. So just two issues, just to grandfather, keep your commitment that you gave us on October, that Sterling Niguel gets grandfathered in, and that we can have the 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., which is allowed to us. Thank you.
Okay, Mary Cahillane.
Good evening, Mayor Genoway, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings, and City Council members. Mary Callahan, 24871 Rigger, a 20-year resident of Sterling Niguel. In City Attorney Dixon's memo to the Traffic Commission dated February 23, 2018, regarding Somerset Point and Sterling Niguel, Mr. Dixon refers to Section 74607A of the Laguna Niguel Municipal Code, which states, "The purpose of the city residential permit parking program is to regulate and manage residential curb parking problems. The parking problems must substantially interfere with the normal and expected use of available street parking spaces at regular daily and weekly intervals." In paragraph 2, Mr. Dixon explains that the issue isn't excluding non-residents from parking in proposed permit areas. The issue is providing a process for residents of the proposed permit areas to be able to park in front of or near their residences. And it is on ensuring that there is public street space available for parking residents' vehicles in the area. Sterling Niguel's situation is this. 43 of our 115 homes do not have driveways, which results in some of our residents parking cars on the street. Combining our manageable level of residential cars with the excess Windridge apartment cars parked in our neighborhood forces us to rely on illegally parking in front of our own driveways, on curves, and in non-legitimate 10-foot spaces. The increase of non-resident cars has evolved our community from one in which people are considerate and conscientious of each other's parking needs and habits to one in which we must compete daily with non-residents for curb space. We did not have parking issues before Windridge Apartments started using our streets for their overflow parking. Excuse me. It is unrealistic to offer us one permit and one visitor placard per each 3- and 4-bedroom house. 37% of our homes have no driveways. Without decals for all vehicles registered to our homes, many cars would be forced to park on Hidden Hills, Niguel Ranch, Karma, which would only exacerbate that mess. One decal and one visitor pass almost feels punitive in nature. Sterling Niguel needs to protect our home values. Without permits, our streets will be free for all for non-resident cars. Even one of the traffic commissioners stated on the record at the December meeting that he asked his realtor not to show him any more houses in Sterling Niguel because of all the parked cars.
You have 20 seconds.
Lastly, at the October 17th City Council meeting, we were unanimously voted to be grandfathered into the original parking permit program because you understood Sterling Niguel's circumstances, for example, lack of driveways, and the fact that our residents signed the petition for permits under the original plan, not under any revised or subsequent plan. Therefore, I implore you to vote Sterling Niguel as a permit parking district under the original parking permit program. One last note, some residents in Sterling Niguel would like the time change from 10 to 6 to 12 to 6. I think that's a fair compromise. If we're voted in, could 12 to 6 be considered? Thank you so much, Mary Cal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Armand? If you could please state your full name and address.
Sure, Armand Tarzi, resident of Sterling Niguel. Thank you very much, honorable council members and city staff, for this opportunity to speak. I agree with the previous speakers that we should be grandfathered in under the previous regimen of the parking restrictions with the additional decals. I will not try to match the good points they already made, so I will talk about the times. Specifically, in the staff report, it makes it seem that the time should be from 10 to 6 o'clock, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Now, in 2017, the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to conduct a professional study from a consulting firm to look into this matter. And even in their report, they recommended from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. They also showed several jurisdictions in our neighboring community and region that have similar time frames. For example, the city of Brea has 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. City of Beverly Hills has 2:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. And San Juan Capistrano has 1 a.m. Fullerton has 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And they also, many of these cities give 4 or 5 guest parking decals or decals to residents. And there's a very simple reason for that, and the purpose is the goal here is to stem overnight parking. The goal is not to have some undue burden on the community where, for example, I think I mentioned this at the last the commission meeting, if there's a late ball game going on well past 10 o'clock, the last thing we want to do is kick our guests out of our house just to comply with the permitting rule of 10 o'clock. And also, a lot of these cities have exemptions for holidays, but if we have a midnight to 6 a.m. time frame or a 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. time frame, we won't need that kind of exemption, because even if we have people over, for example, for a religious holiday or for New Year's Eve, we can still comply with the restrictions, accomplish the goal of stemming overnight parking. So I urge you to adopt this, but with the caveat of bringing us through the old grandfathered in parking structure where we get the additional decals, but also modifying the time. I know there are several other streets in the city of Laguna Niguel that aren't between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And according to the study that we paid for with taxpayer dollars, it looks like that Laguna Niguel is actually the most restrictive when it comes to the parking times. So I urge you to modify the times and also to adopt us through the old regiment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Patrick Callahan.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Patrick Callahan. I'm from 24871 Rigger, Laguna Niguel. And I guess I better say that I have been there for almost 20 years in case you just think I arrived. Back in April in 2016, I was part of the Sterling Niguel people that collected the signatures for our parking permits. And back then, we promised the people who signed the petition to get parking permits that we were going to get a permit for every car that was registered to the home, plus 3 guest permit parkings. Because back then, there was no revised RPPP. So in October 2017, the City Council voted to grandfather us in to the original program. I'm sure my neighbours are going to hold me to what I promised them 2 years ago. I would like to hold you to hold you to what you promised us on October, in the October meeting, and grandfather us in to the old parking permit program. You also, in that meeting, in the October meeting, you sent our recommendation back down to the Traffic Commission, who have now sent it back up to you with a 5-0 recommendation that we get parking permits. In the last 2 years, we have had numerous meetings, both with the Traffic Commission and with the stakeholders meetings, and we had some HOA meetings regarding the parking problems we have in our neighborhood, which we have some serious parking problems in our neighborhood. That 2 years has been very frustrating, and particularly for me, because we have been dealing with the Winridge team, and their sole goal in those 2 years, in my opinion, has been to delay, stall, and impede any progress. I don't think they have come up with any single suggestion other than they wanted, I believe, to pave some of the parks that we have and put in parking lots in there, and
You have
to
30 seconds.
get rid of the green zone. This is my page, and I'm only down to here, so I think I better hurry up. We have 43 homes with no driveways. We also have a number of homes that have only one person in it, and I think to say that we are tied to one parking permit per home is kind of the worst case scenario. I would urge the city to look at demand. There has never been more than 105 cars parked in our Homeowners Association, and 30% of them were not registered. I'm going to have to leave it at that because I see the red light is flashing. I thank you for hearing our concerns, and I urge you to grandfather us in and give us parking permits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Ann Silver.
Mayor, good evening, council members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Forgive me, I'm under the weather tonight. I wasn't sure I'd be able to come. I sent you all an email earlier today, covered a lot of my points. Mostly I'm here to support everything my neighbors and friends have said. We have had quite an impact on our parking from people outside our neighborhood. I personally have lived in Laguna Niguel since March 18th, 1989. They call me the Queen of Topsail because I've been there the longest. We have just got to have the right to park in our own neighborhood, in front of our own homes. We appreciate your support in this, in getting the parking permits taken care of. But as my neighbors have noted, giving one parking permit per household and one gas placard, that's just not going to help. That is punishment to us. So we need your indulgence to grandfather us in, as people have mentioned before, under the previous agreement. That's crazy. That's just, I don't know. I know y'all don't live in our neighborhood, but I think if you did, you'd realize that isn't gonna fly. Then I have one other thing that I don't understand regarding the letter we just received about overflow parking within the Niguel Ranch Master Association. I'm having trouble understanding how restricting overnight parking on the streets that don't have homes fronting on them, how does that do anything other than drive those people who are parked there now into the other neighborhoods where there are homes? Can't we leave those parking places intact and allow people to park on the public streets where they're not impacting people's homes? I personally don't want those cars forced into my neighborhood. I don't want their trash and choice other items abandoned in our neighborhood. So let's let them park where their impact is less on our residences, on our families, on our children, and on our home values. So I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for listening, and please do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Some questions, Director Abazadeh. Can you please tell us about the letter that she just referred to? Do you know anything about that?
That letter was released last Friday to, it's a survey essentially that the Traffic and Transportation Commission directed the staff to release. As you know, overflow parking has been an issue within the Master HOA, and wanted to hear back from the residents. We've had a series of stakeholder meetings, different ideas have been expressed, but there have been maybe 25, 30 people from the neighborhood who've been involved in discussions. And as we recognized last week, the 1,142 residential units there. So we needed to hear back from the community in terms of what their thoughts are about the parking problem. So it is a survey. We expect the results to come back to us at the end of next week, and the results will be presented to the Traffic and Transportation Commission at the end of this month.
Okay, thank you. Also, some items that have been brought up by the residents on the time, the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It seems reasonable that we could change that.
Yeah, I believe the question was put to the HOA before, and the initial response that we got back from them, they were okay with 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But that time frame can change based on the desire of the majority of the folks who live within the neighborhood. 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. sounds reasonable, or even 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. sounds reasonable. The reason I think we've kept it at 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's for the ease of enforcement in the area. As police officers drive around and take a look, if there are conflicting messages out there, it just causes confusion. But a change in that will be fine. Also, to address the issue that was raised with respect to number of permits, if you recall, when the City Council decided to put a cap on the number of permits to be issued, that was in recognition of essentially getting people to clean up their garages and taking care of the clutter that's in their garages and utilizing their driveways and all that. That was the reason why there was a limit put on the future number of permits that are going to be issued. We do recognize that this particular HOA was exempt. However, there's a practical limitation. There's enough space for 115 cars to park within that neighborhood. So staff has recommended 1+1. Even at that rate, you're issuing 230 permits. So if all those folks decide to park that one night, several cars, dozens of cars won't find parking space. But again, at the discretion of the City Council, those numbers can change as well. Thank you.
Okay, and how many parking spaces are out on the street? Oh, the 115? No.
We've actually counted 130. I think the residents will tell you that practically you can only fit 100 cars out there. So we've kind of come up with a compromise. We're saying 115 parking spaces within the neighborhood.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Councilmember Davies?
I want to thank you in regards to the time. I know one of the reasons when we did set 10 o'clock to 6 was actually so that we had boundaries, so someone didn't say, oh, we're going to make it 8 p.m. or 7, which basically would not allow anyone to park on that street except the community. So that's where we'd said, let's start with 10. If you want to make it 12, if you want to make it 2, that's up to each community. So I want to make sure that's why that was up there. This isn't set, but the first few communities, there were a lot of them that wanted to stay with 10 o'clock, but that's flexible per community. I actually think, starting at 12, because again, life doesn't end at 10 o'clock. A lot of us have people, regular TV doesn't end until 11 o'clock. So if you have guests over, it's a holiday, I think 12 o'clock is a great time as well. But I just want that was set there so you had parameters, so you didn't go any below, because again, you never know, you could have a community saying, well, let's just do, 4 o'clock p.m. and we'll have this to ourselves. So that was one of the main reasons. And I do agree that we need to, I understand the limit on how many parking spaces we have. We did grandfather this in, something that the council did vote on. My question is, if we find that it's just not working, that they do have, and I understand, I got 2 different numbers there, but between 30-some and 43, you do not have garages, right, or driveways? Is that correct? Right, right. And now, do you have garages and no driveways? Everyone has a garage. Okay. So, I mean, that obviously has to be addressed because, like I said, just giving you one is not going to work. So what do we do if we find then that, you know, as you said, it could result if for some reason we had everyone, you know, having as many cars as they have, overloading this?
Yes, we ran a quick number. If we go with unlimited number, let's say they get two permanent decals and three guests permits, you're looking at 575 permits out there again for only 115 spaces. So again, there's a practical limit. We can issue as many permits as we want, but since there are only 115 spaces, that's why staff has suggested a cap. But you could go with 2+2 if you like.
Well, I guess my question is, if we grandfather, which was unlimited per car they had registered, and it comes back, and now they're back in front of Traffic and Transportation saying, listen, there's no place to park because we have all these people, you know, the community now, there's too many cars. What can we do?
I'm not sure what we'll do. After we've issued the permits, I guess it's a condition that the neighborhood has to live with.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Great, thank you, Mayor. A couple of things on the time restriction. I think 12 a.m. seems more reasonable to me. I'm a little concerned about 2 a.m. because if there are going to be people parking in your neighborhood after work and they want to, you know, consume space, that's really when people will be parking there, and so that might create a problem. While the spaces might open up at 2 a.m., that doesn't do anybody any good. So I think 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. seem like a much more reasonable time. You know, I got to tell you, I'm concerned about the number of spaces, and while I'm not excellent at math, I can do some math, and it quickly digresses into a problem that if we have 300 plus permits out there, I don't think that we have 300 plus cars living in the neighborhood, but it would be very difficult to unwind that and fix that at some point. While I'm not terribly comfortable as well with one residential and one guest, I don't know where that leaves us. I didn't hear, but I presume that the garages were all two-car garages. Was that accurate? All right. So, you know, I gotta tell you folks, I get the grandfather argument. I get that you're back in the day. This neighborhood is a little bit different than the other ones that we've granted permits on just because of the lack of driveways. So I don't know that I have a solution on that. One of the things that I was thinking was go with the proposal, which was the one resident, the one guest. That still leaves you two in the garage, and that's four. And then, you know, order our staff 6 months from now to do a new count, bring you guys back in, and see if we need to adjust that. I don't know if that's a solution either, but one of the things that I'm concerned about is that we're going to create a problem with no fix to it. Because if I put 300 out there, and then what do we do? And I really want to help, to be honest, because I get the problem and we're trying to work through it. So I'll come back to that in a second, but I want to talk for just a second about the letter that we received from the attorneys for Windridge. That hit my inbox through our city attorney at about 3:30, 3:45 this afternoon on the day that this was set for an agenda item. And that timing is very suspicious to me. It was clear that they had no intention of being able to read it, respond to it, or probably even consider it before tonight for the purpose of trying to delay it even further. And I just want to let them know that that wasn't appreciated, that it's quite obvious, it's very transparent what was going on, and that's not the way that we do business here in town. If you've got something to say it to me well in advance so we consider it. It's bad enough that we get these binders on Friday and we have to read them somewhat hurriedly over the weekend and consume this information. But when we're sandbagged by information that comes in so late that we're unable to consider it, it makes it very difficult. Now, fortunately, their letter was almost a complete repeat of a letter that they wrote back in December, and we have considered it. We did look through that, and we do have the analysis on the CEQA and the other things, and have been reasonably satisfied that we've complied with all of that. But I did want at least the residents to know that I was watching and seeing right through that effort by detractors to try to delay this even further. It may be a good reason substantively to do so, but that was lost on their use of that process. So getting back to the getting back to the number thing for a second, I'd like the Public Works Director, is there a compromise number here? Let's say if there was just one more permit issued for each of the houses, I'm unwilling, by the way, just so anybody thinks I'm going there, I don't think that the grandfather number of unlimited spots and 3 guest permits, this is not your neighborhood, folks. I mean, that would really create a problem of neighbor versus neighbor that I don't think you want. Wouldn't want it in my neighborhood, and I'm a neighbor just like you guys are, and I don't have any street parking either on mine, so I'd have to go borrow somebody else's street. So I get it. But I'm trying to be very practical about providing a solution that gives you a place to park and is somewhat more expansive. So if you could, Director Abazar.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, perhaps 1 permanent plus 2 guests would be the start. And as it was suggested a few minutes ago, we can go back and review the situation in 6 months. We can always add more to it if warranted. And within the next 6 months, the residents will also see how well those 2 numbers work, 1 plus 2. And we'll also get feedback from them. And the item can go back to the Traffic Commission and eventually come back to City Council. But I think 1 plus 2 would provide the most flexibility, because the guest placards can go from car to car. It's not fixed to a particular car.
Correct.
They can move it around.
So they're essentially that's 2 in the garage and 3 total other cars per household. That's 5 cars. If that certainly sounds like a compromise that we ought to be able to deal with. And I don't know what the barter system looks like, but if you've got a guest over and you need another spot, I don't think everybody's going to have the same problem on the same night. So that, my friendly amendment to this would be that we adopt that policy, that we revise it a little bit and I find this a little too restrictive based upon the comments that we've received tonight. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Minigar?
I wanted to echo what Mayor Pro Tem Jennings just mentioned, that I think because of the interest of the community and specifically the Sterling Niguel Homeowners Association, we ought to go with the change in timing 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. for this specific HOA. And secondly, in engineering, we always design any facility for the worst case scenario. And if we're going to be issuing 1 permanent and 3 guest parkings as it was requested, then we have to be prepared as a city, as a municipal corporation, that we're not going to be able to accommodate all those vehicles during the worst case scenario. I'm not saying that it may happen, but we as a city, we have to think about that. Therefore, I'm not in favor of 3 guest parkings, but 2, I think it would be a compromise as it was suggested, because we are here to serve the residents, and based on the feedback again, I think I'm in favor of item A, just to revise the timing from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. And item B on the City Council recommendation to the City Council to revise 1 guest to 2 guest placards, and everything else to remain the same, which would be items A, B, C, D, and E, which is identical to the Somerset, except we are adding item B, which is limitation on the number of parkings for each resident. Thank you.
And then also in the discussion, I heard an item F, which would be to review this in 6 months. Is there consensus of the council to add that?
That was a friendly amendment by Mayor Pro Tem Jennings. I second that motion.
Okay.
And just so everyone knows, that I don't envision that being something that would require the residents to come back in 6 months from now and bother your lives again and go through that process. But what I want is for our staff to do a hard count on the cars that are actually parking there over some period of time, so we can have an understanding if perhaps we've undercommitted and the spaces aren't being used, and that we can expand it at that point. I honestly have no idea. But I think following up on this, because your neighborhood is a little bit unique. I mean, its setup is something that we need to accommodate, and I want to make sure that we try to get it right. And I hope this is viewed as your government trying to help in that regard. So I'm certainly my intent. So.
Okay, so let's clarify item F, review by Public Works staff in 6 months.
That's correct.
That's your intent? Okay. Okay, any other questions or discussion?
No, I agree with my fellow council members in terms of the 12 to 6. It makes a lot more sense. 10 is too early. You'd have to shoo your guests out, and that's not appropriate. But the 2 a.m. would be bad because you don't know what people are going to do out in that car from 12 to 2. There might be a lot of mischief going on at that time, and that's not appropriate either. I totally agree with the 12 to 6. And the, would you say 2 permits?
Guest parking.
Let's hope.
1 resident, 2 guests.
2 guests, and I hope that one works because it's going to be a challenge because it's just too tight. So encourage your neighbors to clean out those garages too. That might be helpful, but I totally agree with what you've got.
Okay. So, City Clerk, do you have all the changes we've made to that?
Yes, Mayor, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Councilman Minigar.
Happy to second.
Seconded by, okay, I just thought you were traffic. Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Jennings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, we will take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Okay, are we ready to resume? Rounding up council members.
Good seeing you.
Okay, our next item is the public hearing on the draft fiscal year 2018-2019 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Action Plan. Planning Manager Jonathan Orduña, can you please give us a staff report?
Good evening, Mayor Genoway and council members. Assistant Planner Catherine Moran will be giving the presentation this evening.
Thank you and good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. The CDBG program is funded by HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Each year, HUD makes grant funds available to the city to fund local activities and improvements aimed at assisting both low and moderate income and special needs residents. The city administers these funds through a reimbursement process. The draft action plan before you is a CDBG program requirement which provides details on the city's intended use of CDBG funds. The city estimates receiving $275,000 for the upcoming 2018-2019 CDBG program year. Up to 15% may be used to fund public service programs, and up to another 20% may be used to cover program administrative costs. The remaining balance may be used to fund economic development programs and capital improvements. On February 21st, the city held a public meeting with the Grants Ad Hoc Committee composed of Mayor Genoway and Mayor Pro Tem Jennings. The committee reviewed the service provider applications and staff capital improvement recommendations, received public testimony, and provided funding recommendations for City Council consideration. The funding recommendations are listed in tables 2, 3, and 4 of your agenda report. The committee's recommendations are summarized as followed. Full expenditure of the allotted 15% for public service programs, approximately $41,250 to fund 5 applicants. These programs will address a wide range of needs within the community. A Senior Meals on Wheels program is run by AgeWell Senior Services. 2 hunger and homeless prevention programs run by Family Assistance Ministries and South County Outreach will work collaboratively to meet the needs of the community. Child care scholarships for after-school programs will be provided through our local branch of the YMCA, and medical and dental services will be provided to uninsured and underinsured residents by Camino Health Center. Cumulatively, these programs aim to assist approximately 3,000 Laguna Niguel residents over the course of the program year. With regard to program administration, funding of fair housing services through the Fair Housing Council of Orange County and CDBG consultant services were recommended, totaling approximately 14% or $39,330 of the total grant allocation, which is significantly below the administrative cap of 20% or $55,000. The remaining balance of $194,420 was recommended for the installation of ADA audible pedestrian push buttons at several intersections according to resident requests received by the Public Works Department. The project also proposes ADA-compliant access ramps at various intersections within CDBG-eligible census tracts based on income level. The capital improvement locations are shown as Attachment A of your agenda report. The proposed capital improvements are consistent with past council action regarding use of CDBG funds and are a highly efficient means of utilizing such funds in light of the heightened monitoring and administrative requirements that encumber any project receiving federal grant funding. With regard to process, the draft action plan was released for a 30-day public review on March 22nd, which concludes on April 20th. To date, no comments have been received. The purpose of this hearing is to receive any public and council input on the document, with a final version to come back to the council for final approval at the May 1st meeting. Once approved by the council, the action plan will be submitted to HUD for final certification. That concludes staff's presentation. I welcome any questions from the council. We also have the city CDBG consultant and expert, Brandy Adair, in the audience if you have any highly technical questions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Moran. Does council have any questions for staff? Not comments, but questions. Okay. Seeing none. Comments later after public hearing.
Oh, after.
Hey, I'm following the script. Okay. Okay, so the public hearing is now open to receive testimony from the public regarding the draft fiscal year 2018-2019 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. Okay, and first we have Jason Marischal.
Good evening. I have a very specific request for an improvement I'd like to see added to the CDBG funding. There's actually an ADA issue close to Moulton Elementary School. As you know, I'm on the Traffic and Safety Task Force there. And Mr. Masboudi and I have talked about it in the past, and I think he's a great partner, so I really enjoy working with him. The city placed a street light in the middle of the sidewalk on Highlands, close to Tamaron, to light the crosswalk across Highlands, which is kind of a dangerous crosswalk. And it placed in the middle of the sidewalk, and there's no longer an ADA clear width at the streetlight. Streetlight was placed by the city at the school district's request. What I understand from Mr. Masboudi is that you don't own the right-of-way enough to actually widen the sidewalk there. I can try to work with the school district to, at minimum, at least get a sidewalk easement dedicated. If you guys could help out by putting in a small retaining wall and widen the sidewalk in that area, it's probably 20 linear feet or so that it would need to be widened. And that's just a request for that improvement to be added to the CDBG list if possible. If it has to do with income level, I guess, where you can actually apply it, I don't know if it would actually apply to that neighborhood, because I just heard that. I wasn't aware of it.
Okay, Mr. Masboudi?
Madam Mayor, this issue we've looked into. We've reached out to the school district to partner with them to try to solve it. They didn't show any interest at the time. I said, we don't have any money. They didn't want to spend the money. So the ADA improvements could be done. I mean, the funds that we have could be allocated to that location or others. So we could look into it, but we need the school district. So if Jason would talk to the school district and they're willing to work with us, there's some improvement needed on their side, whether they give us some right-of-way or an easement to make the sidewalk go onto that property and turn around. So they requested the light. The light was placed, but there was no other right-of-way for us. So maybe at the time, this should have been done better, but I think that's maybe 10 years ago it was done. So we could work with the school district again and look into it and try to find a solution. So the funds could be used. I mean, it's an appropriate use of the funds because they will improve ADA, they will make ADA improvements. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but I'm looking at for this fiscal year? And are there other funds available if it's not approved or if funds are not held aside?
Yeah, if I may jump in here, it's probably best to discuss the issue with the school district first, make sure we have a game plan before we add it on to the project list. The item can come back at a later date, but we should talk to the district first.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand that. That's why I was asking if we could fund this another way after we pass CDBG for this year. Okay. Yes, but if Public Works could pursue that with the school district. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And, okay, Mary Purdue.
Good evening, Mayor Genoway, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings, and Council. My name is Mary Purdue. I'm a resident of San Clemente, although I was a resident in 1981 on Via Acaso here, and in 88 on Malibu Street, so love it here. I wanted to give you a quick update on some of our numbers for those who aren't familiar with us. We have been serving the city of Laguna Niguel since 1999 with homeless prevention and hunger prevention services. This last year, we had encounters where we served 12,924 people in South Orange County who are in need. Of that, 46% are children, 15% are seniors. and it was $2.7 million worth of food and personal care items that went out to people in need. For Laguna Niguel in particular, we almost doubled our encounters with Laguna Niguel residents. It's now at 3,052 encounters in 2017. We provided $5,000 in client aid in the form of rental assistance and utility assistance for 44 Laguna Niguel residents last year, and 13 who were homeless are no longer homeless through our programs in the last year. We have other things that we've done. I just thought I'd give you a broader view of what we do at FAM. We had, 26 residents received their Thanksgiving meals, the full dinners, and 158 children received their Christmas presents. 14 people had their taxes filed for free through our VITA program. And we have 36 Laguna Niguel businesses, churches, schools, and organizations that support us, as well as 102 Laguna Niguel residents who volunteer for us. We are launching a satellite in Laguna Niguel next week, April 12th. So that will be at the Laguna Niguel Presbyterian Church, where we are providing 2 hours a week our case management services, food, clothing, and any other types of services that people need in order to remain housed, or for those who are homeless to get back on their feet. In the last 3 years, 14 Laguna Niguel residents were rehoused through our rapid rehousing program. 20 homeless single women and homeless mothers with children went through our Gilchrist House shelter in San Clemente. And in our brand new shelter, which is the first emergency shelter in South Orange County for families, to include dads, we had 3 Laguna Niguel residents in that program this last year.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Okay, quickly. We do assessments. So we have assessed over 200 homeless in South County in the last 2.5 years. I know today I was at the meeting up in Santa Ana, and it was said that everybody is shipped up there. Not true. We do definitely take care of that down here. And I was going to tell you a quick story about someone who was 24 years old who came into FAM, and he said, "I don't know what I'm doing here." 3 people this week told me to come here, and he had been kicked out of a sober living home the previous week. He remembered everything he had said to Dad and everything that Dad had said to him. So there was no way he was calling home. He knew he wouldn't be welcome. So he decided at 24 years old, this was now his life. He was to be homeless and in the drug culture from now on. When he showed up, we gave him food because he was starving. We helped talk him into letting us call Dad because we've never called home and had somebody say no. Dad was crying because he knew his son had been missing for a week. We got them reconnected, and through our Homeward Bound program, we gave him a one-way bus ticket back to Oklahoma with a plan when he got there, with a suitcase and fresh clothing and food. And so we reconnected it with his loved one.
That's your time.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
No, but thank you for the good work that you do in our community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the support. Appreciate it.
Okay, Laura Fisher.
Good evening. I'm going to start with a story. So, as many of you know, we have 17 condos that we use for transitional housing in addition to our prevention program. But I want to tell you about the condo that we have right here in Laguna Niguel.
And let me just say, Laura's from South County Outreach.
And I actually live on Running Deer, so Running Deer was quite represented tonight. We have a young woman who was originally from Laguna Niguel that's currently living in the condo. She is the mother of 3 and works full-time as an assembly line person for one of our aerospace companies. The sad thing about it is that she makes $10.50 an hour. So that puts her in the extremely low income category, even though she's working very hard and trying to take care of her family. And that's how she ended up homeless and coming to South County Outreach. So she's been there a little over a month. We've worked really hard to reduce some of her debt. She's paid off her car, and she's begun saving. So part of our program is that people are employed, and they save 25% of our income. And so our goal is that by the time she leaves our program, somewhere between 6 and 9 months, she will have roughly $5,000 to get her back into her own permanent housing. Last year, we distributed a little over $130,000 in prevention dollars. In addition to what the city gave us to assist people from a prevention standpoint, we spent an additional $10,000 on people in Laguna Niguel, keeping them housed. So with that, it was 24 additional households that we kept from becoming homeless. And for us, You know, to move somebody into a condo, it's roughly about $11,000, $12,000 for that 6 months to get them stabilized. But for $1,000, we can keep people from becoming homeless. And in many instances, that's really all it takes. So in kind of doing research for the people that we assisted last year, 70% of them, it was the first time they had ever had an eviction. 30% of them had been in their lease 10 years. So that kind of tells you that, you know, even though we heard about the danger and the different issues that have gone on in the riverbed, a lot of the people that are falling into homelessness here in our local community are really long-term members. It's a financial crisis that they just don't have that safety net to be able to keep them from becoming homeless. So I gave you all annual reports, or I handed them off tonight. So those have all of our statistics and will tell you everything that we're doing from a variety of areas. But I just wanted to kind of give you some quick information on how we help. Can I answer any questions?
No, but thank you for what you do to prevent homelessness.
Thank you.
Okay, as we talked about earlier at the meeting, Laguna Niguel does a lot to work on the front end of it and prevent homelessness. These are two organizations that we work with. This is just a small example of what we do. And also in the CDBG grant requests are requests for child care at the YMCA. That's so the parents can go to work to prevent homelessness. We have requests in there also for a low-cost health clinic, so parents can take their kids when they're sick to keep them in school, so the parents can continue to go to work. So there's many ways that we help prevent homelessness here in our community. So are there any comments or questions from the council on this? Is there a motion to approve public hearing item number 1?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Davies, seconded by Councilmember Lindholm. All, is there? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay, public hearing. Oh. Thank you for staying so long for your item. Thank you. Okay, so now we are on public hearing item number 2, the adoption of a false alarm fee. Lieutenant McDaniel.
The city attorney wanted to speak first on this.
Why don't I just give the procedural aspects and then turn it over to Lieutenant McDaniel to talk about the substance. Mayor Genoway, members of the council, the issue tonight is a public hearing on the adoption of the false alarm fee. The city recently adopted an ordinance that provided for the ability to adopt such a fee. That ordinance has now gone into effect, and the issue before the council tonight is whether to actually adopt the fee, and if so, the amount of the fee. Cost study has been done by the Sheriff's Department. Back about 10 years ago, it indicated that the cost of responding to a false alarm was $85 per occurrence. That cost study was recently updated. It was determined that the cost of such response is now $96. That matter was submitted to the Board of Supervisors. Board declined to increase the fee from 85 to 96. We have before you tonight a fee that recommended at 96, but the council could adopt 96, 85, or some other amount, some other lesser amount, or no fee. We have some information from South County cities. All of them are at $85 in a response, except for Aliso Viejo, which is at $64. So the recommended action is to hold a public hearing, and after the conclusion of the public hearing, to adopt the fee. And I'd ask Lieutenant McDaniel to talk a little bit about false alarms and responding to false alarms and how this would work.
Thank you, City Attorney Dixon. As we previously discussed, our deputies responded to 1,234 false alarm calls just last calendar year, 2017. Of those, 276 were from residences or businesses in which this was our third trip or our third false alarm call in that calendar year. What it takes to respond to a false alarm call is at least one deputy during the daytime and 2 in the evening. The time duration is anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes, depending on the length of the drive to get there, and then how big that building is or that residence is. The whole incentive of this, or the whole design of this program, which all the South County cities participate in, and except for us, is to just put some incentive in the business owners and the residence owners to fix their problem alarms. Our deputies take these calls very seriously. They respond. They are trained to take them seriously, so we don't, even if it's the 10th, 15th time in the same address, they take it seriously. So the incentive is to have problem alarms fixed. That's what we're trying to do with this. Not to raise any additional funds, although every time we respond to one of these alarms, it means our deputy's not out there doing traffic enforcement, searching behind buildings or anything of that matter, because they're busy on these problem alarm calls. And that's all we're trying to do is provide some incentive to try to get those alarms fixed so we can stop responding to excessive false alarm calls. And I will just comment on the figure. The figure of $96, that's the true number based on the average time is spent on a call that we respond to on a false alarm call. So there's nothing added to that. I think the $85 fee that most cities have, that's what it was at the time, and that's why they adopted it. They just haven't gone back and redone the $96 fee. But we think it's the right thing to do. If we're doing this for the true reason of our deputies' times that's wasted, that's $96. So that's why that $96 figure was put on there. I'd welcome any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions? Councilmember Davies?
Thank you, Mayor. I completely support this, and it's kind of funny considering the last survey basically was 2008, so it's less than $10 increase in 10 years. But it makes no sense for us to stay with that. If it's going to cost $96, we need to break even. Again, this is to be a deterrent so that we're not taking our police services off the street doing what they need to do. So hopefully this will make a difference down the line. We'll see some stats in a year, but I definitely support the 96 occurrence fee and would make a motion to move after other comments.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing,
Sorry.
so
That's right.
we're doing questions right now. Any questions for staff? Okay, no questions. So now the public hearing is now open to receive testimony from the public regarding the adoption of a false alarm fee. City Clerk Gomez, are there any gold slips?
No, Mayor, you have them all.
Okay, so the public hearing is now closed. Okay, now comments from council members.
I totally agree with my colleague, Councilwoman Lori Davies. I think 96 is the right number because we haven't, if other cities haven't adjusted because of inflation, we should break even. So I'm fine with 96.
Councilmember Lindholm?
No, I'm supportive of the action because I believe our police officers should be out there doing other things. And I know they respond as if everyone could be a critical incident. So to have them go out on just somebody forgot to set their alarm is not appropriate. I'm the one who wanted to increase it if they had more than 9 offenses during a year, which I thought was actually very reasonable because we only had about 13 people who were committing just a little negligent on setting their alarms. But I will support it because looking at the dates of the adoption from the other cities, they're several years old. So with that, I will be supporting it. But I do wish we could somehow send a more stern warning letter to those people who have multiple offenses. I think we could definitely send a letter. That's probably not I would suggest that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I was originally wanting the fee to stay in line with the other cities, and I think I've been sufficiently convinced. I don't see any reason that the $85 must have made sense to them at the time, and 96 is not such a variance that I need to be concerned about it. Plus, it is a break even, so I'm there on that. I was truly shocked when we first received the report on this, on the number of false alarm fees that you all have to deal with. I think it's unacceptable. It's offensive from a public policy standpoint, and we need to do something to stem the tide. I certainly view this as one of the least restrictive means that we could use to fix that problem, but hopefully it will be inordinately effective. So it has my full support, and I would second whatever motion had been made.
Okay, well, I'd like to comment also on this. I believe that we should go for the full cost recovery. We did not add 4 deputies to our law enforcement team to have them going out on false alarms. We added them for public safety. We added them to patrol our streets and keep our residents safe, not because somebody can't set their alarm. This is not for legitimate alarms. This is not for your first false alarm or your second. This is the 3rd time in a calendar year that there's a false alarm at the same residence or business. So it does take our deputies off the streets and away from protecting our residents and our children. So I think there should be the full cost recovery of it. And I'm in full support of it. And I really do hope that this gets the numbers down so our deputies can be doing other things than responding to false alarms. So was there a motion?
Yes.
Councilmember Davies moved, second by Mayor Pro Tem Jennings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, and now on to other business and council reports. Okay, so first we have the ad hoc committee reports. We have the Bus Shelter Design Committee. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Minigar and I are the representatives to the ad hoc committee for bus shelter design. Some things are more fun than others to be on a city council. This was a good one. You wouldn't think that this would be a big deal, but the bus shelters in town, drive by and take a look at them, and you won't be proud, and I wasn't. So once I started paying attention to it, it was something that we could obviously do something to fix, make a real impact on it. This is part of an ongoing process in addition to the revisions at Crown Valley Park, the entry monument signs, the additional trees that are going in. This is something that we can do that's certainly within our reach. The designs that have come back are they're more economical than I thought they were going to be. They are very much in keeping with the other design elements we've been doing on the things that we just mentioned, and they will look good, and they're very obvious, and they, as currently proposed, and we'll bring this back to the council, they do not include an advertising component, so the ads that are on there we weren't finding were financially really making any difference at all to the city. It wasn't that much money to begin with, and there was a constant staff effort to how to turn those over and refresh them, and they're also subject to vandalism and things. So in only 2 short meetings with the very good assistance of staff with Director Abizadeh and Engineering Manager Mejboudi and their teams, we have come up with not only the design to make it solar so that it really is energy neutral, to have LED lighting in it so it's bright but not chewing up energy. It's a very attractive design. It's scalable, so we have some bus designs that are larger. We have some that are very thin because they're on narrow sidewalks to accommodate ADA issues. And I think it's going to make a real difference. So not only has that happened, we've also picked out perspective colors and textures for the seating, which are also designed to avoid people who might want to sleep on benches and things. These are very specifically designed blocks that are architecturally interesting, that are far enough apart that you wouldn't be able to sleep between them, and the trash receptacles would match them. And so really we anticipate before it was before Director Abizadeh joins the retirement community. We anticipate before June to come back with a completed proposal with not only the finances, the completed design, and everything else to present to you all for approval. And I'm not remembering the implementation timeline, but it wasn't that long. I think we could start seeing them being installed this year. And correct me if I'm, did we have 40 of those, or am I doubling the number in my head?
You may recall that we have $200,000 this year, and we will ask additional funds next year. So depending on how much money we have, and as you mentioned, that the prices are fairly reasonable. Depending on the final design, we're looking at somewhere between $24,000 to $30,000. So within those limitations, we will probably wind up building about 40 of those.
And we're using.
And by the way, as you mentioned, we look to construction to start around October of this year.
October. Gary, I appreciate the clarification. So we are attempting to make you proud, and hopefully the city and the rest of the council will enjoy what has gone on.
Okay, thank you. And then on March 26th, we had a meeting of the Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee. City Manager Ridge did survey the businesses in our through the Chamber of Commerce, because we're creating a concierge level of service when our businesses, either existing or new businesses, contact our community development department. So we're kind of putting that all together, making a real nice package of it, also working on a logo for that, and talked about some branding for our city. So, and then she and I will be attending the International Shopping Center, ICSC, International Conference of Shopping Centers convention next month to see what businesses we would like to attract to Laguna Niguel. We know how great we are, we just need to let the rest of the world know. And then council reports. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Minigar. You smile like that, you get to go first.
I'm skipping. It's getting late. It's 10 to 10. I just
Okay, then go.
make it short to the point. On March 21st, I attended the Finance and Investment Committee and also the Joint Tolls Operations Committee of TCA as the chairman of San Joaquin Hills. During the same evening, on behalf of TCA, I went to OCTA to welcome California Transportation Commission members coming from Sacramento to Southern California on March 22nd. I was the guest speaker on behalf of the TCA during the Orange County Council of Governments General Assembly in Disneyland to talk about the status of the toll roads in Orange County. During the same day, I went ahead and as a private citizen, I attended Judge Carter's hearing at the U.S. Federal Court for the first time. You know, I know my colleague is an expert there, but I wanted to see the atmosphere of Judge Carter, and it was pretty interesting to watch and listen and observe what's going on. On Tuesday, March 27th, which everybody knows, along with my colleagues, we went to Orange County Board of Supervisors' big meeting, and we expressed our opinion with regard to the homeless issues and the proposal of Orange County Board of Supervisors to deploy them, to have them right next door to our beautiful City Hall. And since everybody knows about it, I'm going to keep it short to the point. On Wednesday, March 28th, along with the mayor at the City Hall, we had an excellent presentation by Assembly Member Bill Breaux and Orange County Taxpayers Association CEO with regard to the proposed Prop 13, which is a split tax bill, and how California businesses would be potentially adversely impacted. And we are very happy that our representative, Assemblyman Bill Breaux, is on the top of everything, and we got a very good education with regard to how the tax system can impact all of us, the hardworking residents of this beautiful city, that the more you work and the more taxes you pay and the less you get coming back to our beautiful city and to the County of Orange as a donor city and donor county rather. So we have to stay tuned with regard to what's going on with that. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you. For those of you who know me, I tend to be very short. I just want to thank all our residents for all they have done to communicate what a difficult location this would have been for a tent city and how it would not have helped the homeless people. All our residents were out there. They worked hard. and they communicated on behalf of their children, on behalf of their families. And at the same time, they expressed their compassion and their desire to help them get self-sufficiency. And as you've seen tonight with the CDBG funds, the great work that's done by our community organizations, and we're happy to support them, and have since the beginning. Since we've been here, we've always contributed to them. And I want to thank my fellow council members for standing up and just showing great leadership. And with that, I'm going to conclude.
Thank you. Councilmember Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Jennings and myself attended the IBNA meeting, and it was a really good meeting. We're in the process right now of starting to implement the different responsibilities that the council approved last year. So up and running and tight staff, and I was really happy to have our city manager attend as well. She has a lot of knowledge when it comes to that. So thank you for attending. And I just want to make a real brief comment. I am a director of OCFA. I'm honored to be a director, and obviously we're in negotiations right now with the dispatchers. So being that, I'm not going to say anything because it's negotiations, but I do want you to know that safety is our #1 priority in the decisions that we make as a board. Whether it's this city or it's all of the cities, safety is a priority for our staff, for our firefighters, but most endear for our residents. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, my colleagues, for bringing up the other events and things that we've attended through the last couple of weeks, so I won't repeat those. I, too, wanted to say thank you to the residents and thank you to the Laguna Niguel government. I think that we, as a city, do things right. We know where the lines of justice are, and we draw them, and we point them out, and we try to exercise good, prudent government decisions when the time comes to make them, and we were joined by thousands and thousands of residents in those decisions. I was equally just overwhelmed by the outpouring of compassion that came immediately after that. It's one thing to raise public rancor about an issue that everyone felt strongly about, and I think that was the right decision. But right after that came a wave of compassion and a desire to do something to fix these problems. And we heard very compelling stories tonight from South County Outreach and Family Assistance Ministry, which are just two examples of thousands of instances that that's happening here in town. That's the benefit of having a very solid public-private partnership with entities like that. And I think that's another reason why Laguna Niguel does an extraordinarily good job of handling these problems when they occur and not letting them get past the very unfortunate and very sad issue that happens right after that when people become homeless, and it's very difficult to pull them back off the street. So I've been very proud of our city in the last 2 weeks, not because of anything that we've done necessarily, but just as a city, it's nice that we have these frequent reminders of how I think we're getting it right here in town. And I hope to join in the rest of our county in getting it right in that issue as well. And I think that's the right thing to do for our citizens as well. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Well, as you know, we've been spending much of our time on the homeless issue and the plight of homeless in Orange County, and the lack of a plan or the implementation of a plan to provide the needed services to them has consumed our time, our energy. It's touched our hearts. It's caused us to evaluate our public safety, and it also raised our community up to speak with one voice to hold the Board of Supervisors accountable, or as Judge Carter stated at today's meeting, the slow rot of indecision. The responsibility lies squarely with the Board of Supervisors. It took years for this to grow to the present magnitude, and in fact, the 2005 Orange County Grand Jury issued a report on the need for action for the Orange County homeless population. What we have seen countywide as homeless people were moved from the riverbed is that hundreds have accepted services to begin to get their lives back on track and return to physical or mental health. No one is denying the fact that there are some that have refused services, or approximately 7% engage in criminal activity, and Judge Carter agrees that criminals need to go to jail. What I did see was thousands of Laguna Niguel residents become engaged and communicate. With one voice, Laguna Niguel residents spoke to the Board of Supervisors. I am so very proud of our community and our citizenry. You are a living example of democracy in action. And after today's meeting, I'm very hopeful that the leaders of our South County cities will find a resolution to this issue. There are over $330 million of county funds, and Judge Carter is determined to locate where the interest earned on those funds has gone. There's also about $2.5 billion available statewide for this. This issue is not resolved, and now the city mayors have been tasked with identifying a site and a solution for the 3 health service districts in our county. Think of the South County Service District as our extended community. Continue to stay engaged, informed, and compassionate. I've met with the executive directors of Family Assistance Ministries, Mary Perdue, and South County Outreach, Laura Fisher, both of whom were here earlier this evening, to work together to provide opportunities for the rest of the service organizations in our city to help prevent homelessness and to increase the impact of Laguna Niguel efforts on our community, both immediate and extended. I met with them on March 21st, and as I probably mentioned before, City Manager Ridge, Councilmember Lynn Holm and I are interested in establishing that homeless task force, and then also there's the agenda item for the how we're going to step up. Okay. And then let's see, what else have I done? It's beginning to become a blur. But and on that task force, we want to be sure to include the nonprofits. Okay. On March 22nd, we join with the Laguna Niguel Chamber of Commerce as they welcome City Manager Ridge and Chief of Police Services McDaniel to the Laguna Niguel family. On March 23rd, I met with the principals of No Plane Noise, Ken O'Leary, Stephen Bakke, and Scott Cubbage. And then, let's see, these are all homeless. On March 29th was the ACCOC Legislative Committee, and we'd like to have, Councilmember Davies and I would like to have a report and consider a resolution on SB 54, the Sanctuary City. Okay. I also met with the homeowners at their annual HOA meeting for Monarch Summit, gave them a city update, and they were thrilled to hear all the wonderful things that our city is doing. And then last night met with the Homeowners Association of El Niguel Terrace to give them an update on what is going on with the county property, both with the homeless issue and the RFP that the county has issued, because their property borders or looks down on that parcel. And then this morning started out with the meeting in federal court with Judge Carter. This Thursday, kids are on spring break this week, so this Thursday is Meet the Mayor at Crown Valley Spray Ground. So Meet the Mayor, trying to get out to people who may not always have the opportunity to come to City Hall during regular hours. So figured let's catch the parents or grandparents when they're taking the kids to the spray ground. So 4:30 to 6:30, come to Crown Valley Park to the spray ground. Meet the Mayor. We'll be talking about the wonderful developments that we have going on or plan to do for Tier 3 for Crown Valley Park, and then also the different programming that our Parks and Recreation Department will be offering. I know it's late. And there'll be popcorn, right, Debbie? Yes, we're going to have a popcorn machine. So 4:30 to 6:30 on Thursday. And then next Tuesday, April 10th, the Laguna Niguel Junior Civic Workshop. The topic is Animals in Laguna Niguel, Past and Present. And the past is teaching the kids about the fossils we have discovered in Laguna Niguel. And then present is Mission Viejo Animal Services will be coming in. We're hoping they'll bring some snakes again this year. That was exciting. Okay, so that concludes our council reports. Now on to staff reports. Lieutenant McDaniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next Coffee with a Cop event is next Tuesday, April 10th, from 7 to 9 a.m. at Plumeria Cafe on Aliso Creek. Just come out, and I love that our deputies get to meet the citizens up close and personal and ask whatever questions they might have. It's important for me, so obviously you guys are all welcome, but love to have the citizens come out and just meet our guys up close and personal. So that's next Tuesday, April 10th 7 to 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Dixon. Okay, Fire Chief. Director Roseberry. Mr. Mizbudi. Mr. Odunya. Ms. Morian. City Clerk Gomez. Ms. Bell.
I'm sorry, this isn't fair. It's very late, but Allie, in her absence, asked me to make a couple of announcements for her. Yeah, she's in Hawaii. It's not really fair. Nominations are open at this time for Citizen of the Year. We are starting to receive the nomination forms, and the nomination period closes at the end of April. And on Saturday, April 14th, at 10 o'clock here in Laguna Niguel City Hall, we have a high school career and job and college fair. It's been organized by the youth committee. And it will include 21 employers and 19 schools for students to network with, and there'll be a presentation on how to dress for an interview. And I wanted to share with you that this year in the legislature already, there are 4 bills that address sober living homes. So we are monitoring the bills. 2 of the bills are sponsored by Senator Bates, and she's a co-author of AB 2214, which is actually on the floor. Each of these bills is a little different and has a little different approach to resolving the issues, and we'll go ahead and support those bills that are in line with the action that council took. I think now it's been out 2 years that we want to support all legislation that will help our residents with regard to sober living homes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate your reminder about the Citizen of the Year nomination period that's open. And just so our public knows, that is not an activity of the city, but the Citizen of the Year committee greatly appreciates the city helping get the word out, so that all residents have the opportunity to nominate those people who make life in Laguna Niguel better for all of us to live and work. So, Director Abazadeh. Okay. City Manager, nothing? Nothing? We all are. So is that it? Okay, so the meeting is adjourned at 10:08.